I once believed love was unbreakable, that vows meant forever, and that my wife's smile could never lie. But illusions shatter fast when I found her entwined with a man I didn't even know existed. That day I tasted betrayal so bitter, it scorched away every ounce of innocence I once clung to. So I did what any rational man would do. I planned my revenge in cold, meticulous detail. I recorded whispers in the dark, tracked her footsteps, and watched them scramble like trapped rats. Fear tightened around my chest, yet adrenaline fueled me, pushing me closer to the truth I desperately craved. And truth, when fully exposed, can be a vicious blade, slicing through every comforting lie we ever believed. In the end, their laughter turned to pleading. My heartbreak ignited a fury that burned them both down. I'm not proud of how far I went, but I'll never regret showing them I was never the fool. This is my confession, my reckoning, and if you dare follow, be prepared for the darkness that awaits. I used to think that trust in a marriage was something you could just assume would last forever. You get down on one knee, you promise a lifetime, and then you figure that's it, you're safe. Because when you look at that person across from you, vowing to stick it out in sickness and health, you believe them without question. That's where my head was when Anna and I exchanged our vows. 5 years later, I wasn't prepared for the twinge of uncertainty that wormed its way into my mind on a random Monday. I still remember the color of the sky, an unimpressive gray that made the Chicago skyline look dull. I remember the mild headache behind my eyes from too little sleep and too much coffee. And I remember the growing ache in my gut telling me something was off. I just didn't know what. My name is Shane, and I've always considered myself a capable man. Steady job as a financial consultant, decently fit thanks to a consistent gym schedule and a natural inclination toward planning every detail of my life. I'm not the type to leap into things blindly. Even when I met Anna, the woman who became my wife, I approached it like a well-researched investment. She laughed at that early on, teasing me for carrying a metaphorical spreadsheet in my head about love. But at the time, she liked that I was methodical and stable. "You're my rock," she'd say, and it filled me with a sense of quiet pride. That Monday started out like any other. I was ironing my dress shirt while Anna finished blow-drying her hair. She'd always been the vibrant one, prone to witty comebacks and spontaneous weekend adventures. But that morning, I could tell something in her manner felt off. She seemed preoccupied, glancing at her phone with a quick flick of her eyes. She mumbled something about needing to head out earlier than usual for a work meeting. I can't say it screamed affair at me right away, but it created a half-second pause in my brain. At the breakfast table, I noticed Anna's phone screen light up with a message, but she flicked it face down before I could see it. Fine. She has privacy. Everyone does. Yet, I couldn't shake the slight tension around her eyes, like she was bracing for a question from me that never came. We parted ways in the driveway as I slid into my sedan and she hopped into her compact SUV. She gave me a peck on the cheek, and I recall it felt perfunctory. This is the kind of small detail you ignore if your relationship is perfect. But ours, I began to suspect, might not be so perfect anymore. I arrived at my firm's downtown office, stepping into the high-ceilinged lobby. My day was dominated by emails, client calls, and analysis spreadsheets for a big corporate merger. By lunchtime, the lingering doubt from the morning had receded behind columns of numbers. Then, around 2 p.m., I got a call from Anna's coworker, Monica. She wanted to confirm if Anna was feeling better, because apparently Anna had left their office around noon. My immediate response was confusion. Anna had texted me at noon saying she was swamped with back-to-back meetings. Why would Monica ask me if Anna was feeling better? Unless Anna had told them she felt ill. Something didn't align. I kept calm on the phone, telling Monica I hadn't heard about Anna being sick. Maybe she took a personal errand, I offered, forcing a small laugh. Monica didn't push it. She said goodbye, sounding a bit confused herself. That call planted the first real seed of suspicion. Driving home that evening, my heart thumped with an unfamiliar heaviness. I wasn't sure how to approach Anna. Should I just tell her, "Hey, your coworker called, said you left at noon, is everything okay?" It sounded so simple, so normal, but a part of me dreaded the possibility she'd lie. Or the possibility she'd tell the truth and the truth would be something I couldn't handle. Still, I had to know. I hated the idea of doubt living rent-free in my mind. By the time I pulled into our garage, I decided I'd ask her gently, no accusations, just curiosity. After all, I had no proof of anything. People change schedules all the time. Maybe Anna just left the office and forgot to mention it. But that night, as I raised the question during dinner some chicken stir-fry I'd thrown together, her reaction slapped me with a bolt of clarity. She froze for a split second, her fork mid-air before plastering on a too-wide smile. She offered a fumbling explanation about how she had a headache, left for a pharmacy, then ended up picking up groceries. Her story was oddly convoluted, with details that contradicted themselves. She insisted she felt fine afterward and went back to the office, but the entire narrative felt forced, like a half-baked script. I nodded, pretended to accept it, and watched the relief wash over her. But inside, alarm bells were ringing. My wife, who used to be the world's worst liar, had just lied smoothly enough to nearly fool me. That meant she'd practiced. Maybe it was for something harmless. Or maybe it was for something that could blow our life to pieces. I kissed her forehead later that night with an unease swirling in my chest. She drifted off to sleep quickly. I couldn't sleep at all. The next morning, I decided to observe Anna's behavior more closely. I told myself it was probably just a silly misunderstanding, but the suspicious part of my brain was wide awake. I had a big client meeting scheduled at 9 a.m. I was ironing a crisp shirt again, my repetitive routine, I guess. Anna slipped into the room, rummaging for her favorite heels. She kept glancing at her phone, tapping out quick texts. I teased her lightly. "Big day?" She shrugged. "Yeah, marketing presentation. Wish me luck." I offered a supportive smile. Then her phone buzzed in her hand and a small jolt rattled her body. She fumbled to switch off the ringer and mumbled, "Just Monica being anxious." I realized I was holding my breath. I let it out slowly, telling myself not to spiral into paranoia. But the more I tried to push down my concerns, the more they bubbled up. I wanted to check her phone. The very thought shocked me. We had never been that couple, no privacy boundaries violated, no surreptitious glances at each other's messages. Yet here I was, itching to see who she was texting. On my commute downtown, my stomach twisted in knots. She was my wife. I loved her. 5 years of marriage, built on mutual trust. If I doubted her, what did that say about me? But if I was right, if she was hiding something. The thought made me grip the steering wheel harder. To distract myself, I tackled my tasks at the office aggressively, finishing a chunk of the day's workload by lunch. At 12:30, I stepped out for a quick sandwich at a nearby cafe. That's where I spotted Anna's SUV across the street, parked near a small bistro. There was no sign of her inside, though. I took a moment to check the reflection in the cafe window. Yep, definitely her distinct license plate frame. She was nowhere to be found, and it was unusual for her to come downtown unless she was meeting me or had a business event. I lingered by the cafe's window for a couple of minutes, scanning passers-by. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Anna walking briskly 2 blocks away. She wasn't alone. She was next to a tall, athletic-looking man wearing a dark jacket, the two of them in some focused conversation. I couldn't see his face from where I stood, but I noticed how he leaned in toward her, how her posture seemed stiff yet oddly close to him. They disappeared around a corner before I could cross the street to get closer. My heart thudded. The instant reaction was a wave of adrenaline, an urge to sprint after them. But logic kicked in. I was in my suit, midday on a busy sidewalk. What if it was a simple business lunch with a colleague? Should I create a scene in public only to discover some benign explanation? Instead, I returned to the office, though I can't recall how I survived the rest of that afternoon. My mind replayed the image. Anna, shoulders slightly hunched, walking side by side with a stranger. The question hammered at me. Who is he? The swirl of doubts was dizzying, but I told myself, collect facts, keep calm. My approach to everything else in life had always been methodical. Now I needed that approach more than ever. That evening, I waited at home, sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, half working. Anna texted me that she'd be late, claiming an office emergency. The memory of seeing her downtown with that man added gasoline to my anxiety. The hours passed, and it was nearly 9 p.m. when she walked in. She wore her typical business casual outfit, hair slightly disheveled, and gave me a quick, apologetic smile. She repeated a half-baked story about some marketing fiasco. I asked calmly, "What about lunch today? I thought I saw your SUV near Lower Wacker." She froze for half a second, then recovered with a half-laugh. "Oh, that was a client meeting. We were looking at possible billboard locations." Another clumsy explanation that contradicted her supposed all-day crisis at the office. I didn't press further. The heartbreak in my chest told me that she was lying. I recognized that hurried, uncertain tone. Something big was happening, and I was no longer sure I wanted to know the answer. Yet deep down, I knew I had to. One of the things I pride myself on is my ability to strategize. Clients hire me to manage their portfolios because I predict outcomes well. If a pattern emerges, I investigate. So I decided to gather data quietly. The next morning, while Anna was in the shower, I found the courage, or foolishness, to grab her phone from the nightstand. My hands shook. This was not me. I'm not the jealous type. But I opened her phone anyway. A passcode. She'd never had one before. My throat tightened. I tried her usual codes, her birthday, our anniversary. None worked. This was a new passcode that locked me out. I heard the shower water stop, so I placed the phone back, quickly returning to pretend I was making the bed. That surge of panic hammered home how far from normal we'd become. At breakfast, she seemed cheerful, perhaps too much so. "I might be home late again tonight," she said. "Busy week, you know." I forced a light nod. This time I didn't bother with questions. I let her run off. Then I started planning. I found a phone tracking app that can be installed remotely if you share an iCloud account, but we never used shared accounts. Next, I considered asking her friend Monica some leading questions. But Monica might tip Anna off. Then an idea came. I had an old contact, Chris, who was ex-law enforcement and now did private investigation work on the side. Maybe it was time I asked him for a small favor. That evening, I called Chris from my car, parked under a flickering streetlight a few blocks from home. My voice was hushed, as if the phone line was bugged. I told him I suspected Anna was lying about her whereabouts. I asked if he could discreetly follow her for a few days. I recall the embarrassment coursing through me like I was a paranoid husband from a bad soap opera. But Chris took it in stride. "Better to know than to guess," he said. "Leave it to me." A swirl of guilt washed over me. Did hiring a friend to tail my wife cross the line? Possibly, but the alternative was letting my imagination run wild. So I justified it as truth-seeking. If I found out nothing was wrong, I'd apologize privately to Anna for my lack of trust. If something was wrong, at least I'd have real information. When I got home, she wasn't there. The clock ticked to 10 p.m. before her SUV finally pulled in. She tiptoed inside, startled to see me awake. I forced a calm smile. "Long day?" She nodded, offered some excuse about a last-minute client meltdown. I gently teased, "Must be nice to have clients melt down outside your office building since I saw your SUV downtown near the bar district earlier." Her eyes flared wide, but she composed herself. Forced laughter. "You must have seen some other SUV. Or maybe I swung by there to get coffee with a coworker. Hard to remember." She brushed off any deeper explanation, but her gaze wavered. I recognized it as fear. That was the moment I knew for sure. She wasn't just lying about a random midday run. She was systematically concealing entire chunks of her schedule. And it cut me deeply, a betrayal that overshadowed the actual details. Something big was happening behind my back, and she was rewriting reality to keep me in the dark. The next few days, my anxiety escalated. I'd wake up earlier than usual, half tempted to rummage through her purse or laptop, then hate myself for sinking so low. We still shared the same bed, but the emotional gap felt canyon-wide. At times, she'd roll over at night, lightly drape her arm around me, almost as if by habit. I'd remain awake, feeling like I was next to a stranger. I told Chris to begin his discreet surveillance. He wasn't exactly a top-notch private investigator, just an ex-cop with some free time. But he was thorough enough. He set up vantage points near Anna's office. He even installed a small GPS tracker under the underside of her SUV with a magnet, a trick he said was borderline illegal, but I let him proceed. I went about my normal routine, forcing a semblance of normalcy at the firm. I smiled at coworkers, delivered client presentations with my usual composure. But inside, my stomach churned daily. Anna texted me sweet nothings at odd times, "Miss you," or "hope you're having a great day," like she was trying to maintain a veneer of normal. Part of me still clung to the possibility that maybe she was just planning a surprise for me or dealing with a personal crisis. The other part of me scrolled through worst-case scenarios: an affair, a gambling problem, or a secret second job. My mind cast wild theories, none of them comforting. By the fourth day, Chris called me with initial findings. "She's definitely meeting a guy," he said. My heart jolted. "What do you mean, definitely?" I managed to keep my voice even. Chris explained that on 2 separate occasions, Anna's SUV ended up in the same area downtown at midday, where she met a tall, athletic man. They spent about an hour together, each time once at a cafe, another time strolling around a hotel courtyard, then parted ways. I pictured Anna strolling with that same figure I'd glimpsed from afar. "Got a name?" I asked, voice tight. Chris didn't have it yet. He'd seen them chat intimately. No overt physical contact, but definitely not a standard co-worker vibe. They parted with a quick hug the second time. Chris's tone was apologetic, like he hated giving me bad news. I must have sat in my car for half an hour after that call, parked in my own driveway, staring at the steering wheel. The emotional storm inside me was intense. My mind screamed, "Anna is having an affair. She's meeting another man behind your back." The denial part of me scrambled to rationalize, maybe he's just a friend. But the subtext was too strong. She was lying about her location, sneaking around. That evening, I faced her across our living room, the TV muted, a tension coiled in the air. I asked about her day. She spun some story about an exhausting marketing pitch. I stared at her, feeling heartbreak coil around me. I considered confronting her with Chris's info, but part of me wasn't ready. It was as if once I spoke it aloud, our marriage would shatter irreparably. So I nodded, feigning acceptance. She looked relieved again. My heart clenched at that expression, relieved that she'd gotten away with lying. I told myself, gather more evidence, be sure. Because once I accuse her, there's no going back. The next step in my plan was to see if there was any financial trail. As a financial consultant, I know how transactions can reveal secrets. We have separate bank accounts plus a shared household account. Anna handles most grocery and household expenses from the shared one. I started reviewing those statements carefully. To my surprise, over the past month, there were random charges at places we never frequent: a boutique downtown, a fancy lounge known for live jazz. I cross-checked the dates. They coincided with days Anna claimed to be working late. My stomach twisted. If she was at that lounge, who was she with? This tall guy? After spotting these charges, I confronted her in a gentle tone. "Hey, you've been enjoying some jazz? Didn't know you were into that." She froze momentarily, then plastered a smile. She said it was a new marketing client who liked to hold informal meetings at that lounge. Another excuse. Another pang in my chest. As the days progressed, the tension in our household thickened. We both tiptoed around each other. She tried to keep her phone away from my sight. I pretended not to notice. At work, I functioned like an automaton, shutting off personal turmoil whenever a client needed me. But the moment I was alone in my office or my car, the pain came rushing back. One Thursday night around 9 p.m., Anna was working late again. Chris texted me that her SUV was parked near a new residential complex. She'd gone inside about half an hour ago, presumably with that same unknown male. I told Chris not to confront them, just observe. He said they were definitely together. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped my phone. I stared at our living room walls, at the pictures of us smiling on our wedding day, at the framed photos from our vacations. A wave of fury overcame me, fury at Anna for betraying me, fury at myself for letting it happen. But I forced that anger down. I was still missing one final piece. I wanted the man's identity. The next morning, Chris told me the man's name was Lance Morgan, gleaned from some partial snooping. He was a fitness trainer at a high-end gym. My heart hammered. Anna never mentioned any personal trainer. She wasn't even that devoted to working out as far as I knew. Then it made sense. She must have met him somehow, maybe tried out a gym session, and something spiraled from there. That entire weekend, I oscillated between heartbreak and a cold determination to find the truth. Anna told me she had a marketing retreat on Saturday. She left wearing casual clothes, suspiciously nicer than her usual weekend attire. Chris confirmed she spent the day with Lance at a lakeside rental property. They arrived in separate cars but left in Lance's. She didn't come home until after midnight, claiming the retreat had been exhausting. I watched her slip into bed, resisting the urge to scream. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, tears burning my eyes. This was it, my wife was cheating on me, forging a separate life with this Lance. The slow burn of betrayal was excruciating, but so was the quiet rage fueling me. I resolved that night. I wouldn't be the clueless husband who begs or storms out. I'd handle this methodically. I'd get real proof, unassailable evidence. Then I'd make my move. The following Monday, I began to design a plan. If Anna was risking our finances or anything else, I needed to safeguard. First, I surreptitiously shifted some money from our shared account to my personal account, just enough to ensure she couldn't drain it if things turned ugly. Next, I scoured my home office for any personal documents that might be crucial, our mortgage papers, my investment portfolios, locking them away in a separate safe deposit box. It felt surreal, taking such steps against my own spouse, but I saw no alternative. If she was lying about something as core as fidelity, she might lie about money too. The illusions of trust were shattered. Anna, for her part, continued to pretend everything was normal. She'd come home from client dinners with an odd glow, sometimes humming a soft tune. She was more physically distant from me, though still sometimes trying to act sweet. I'd see moments of guilt in her eyes, but she'd bury it fast. One evening she asked me, "You okay? You seem stressed." The irony was thick. I could have spat back, "Stressed because you're cheating." But I held it in. Instead, I mumbled something about a big client contract. She told me not to overwork myself. The bitterness inside me flared. Later that night, as she slept, I found myself in the living room, quietly pacing. I discovered how hate can coexist with love in the same heart. I still cared for her memories of our happier times weighed on me, but I hated what she was doing now, turning me into a suspicious wreck, destroying the life we built. The next day, Chris provided photos. He'd snapped them from a distance. Anna and Lance holding hands briefly outside a coffee shop, Anna leaning toward him in a private conversation. That photographic proof should have hammered the final nail in my hope, yet it still hurt like a fresh wound. I stared at the pictures on my phone, my breath ragged. No more illusions. I started harboring an idea of confronting Lance directly. But Chris advised caution. Confrontation might lead to violence or a messy scene. You're better off using this evidence for a clean break. Part of me wanted to punch that guy in the face, but the bigger part wanted a more strategic approach. My mind drifted to the notion of revenge, something measured and devastating to them, but how? I realized I needed more than proof of the affair. I needed to find out if they were plotting anything bigger, like if she intended to leave me blindsided financially or socially. Anna was a good talker. In a divorce scenario, she could spin a story that painted me as the controlling villain. If I didn't gather a bulletproof set of facts, I might lose half of everything I'd worked for. Or worse, I might end up looking like the bad guy. I decided to bug the house. Not in a tacky sense, but with small voice-activated recorders. The morality of it was questionable, but my desperation overshadowed my scruples. I placed one in the living room lamp and another in our home office desk area. If Anna brought Lance inside our home, God forbid I'd have audio proof. A few days later, I discovered from Chris that she'd only met Lance outside, never bringing him home so far. But I kept the recorders in place. Sometimes, after I left for work, Anna returned midday for who knows what. If I captured any phone calls or discussions, it might confirm her plan or timeline. During this period, I was outwardly calm to Anna. I even started cooking her dinners, pretending to be the supportive husband, lulling her into false security. Each night, though, I prayed she'd slip up. My phone beeped one afternoon with a text from Chris. "Possible opening, she's at the house now, not alone." My stomach lurched. I quickly stepped out of a meeting, heart pounding. Chris said he saw Lance's car near our driveway. My phone nearly slipped from my sweaty palm. Anna had brought him to our own home. The audacity. I rushed to my car and sped back, cursing traffic lights. Meanwhile, I dialed Chris. He reported that they went inside about 10 minutes ago. He was parked discreetly down the street. I told him not to intervene. My blood boiled. Part of me wanted to smash in there and confront them. But the calmer side hissed, "We have recorders. Let them talk." I reached my block. Chris waved from his sedan. "They're still in there." I parked, adrenaline surging. but I forced myself to wait. Eventually, about 20 minutes later, Lance emerged with Anna. They looked a bit tense, maybe wary. They parted with a brief hug near the front door. Lance headed to his car. Anna locked the door behind her. I ducked lower in my seat. The moment they drove off, I felt a swirl of heartbreak and rage. I texted Anna, "I had to stay at the office late, see you tonight," lying that I wouldn't be home until 9 p.m. She responded with a cheerful, "Okay, sweetie, good luck with work." The hypocrisy stung. That evening, once she dozed off, I retrieved the voice recorder from the living room lamp. My hands trembled, hooking it up to my laptop. The audio was faint but discernible. I heard footsteps, muffled rustling, then Anna's voice. "We have to be quick. Shane's probably busy all day, but I don't want to risk it." Lance's deeper tone responded, "Relax, he's clueless." Then some talk about making sure finances line up, referencing how Anna needed more time to figure something out before she could fully separate. My skin crawled. They were discussing the possibility of her leaving me, possibly messing with finances. The exact lines were jumbled, but I caught enough. "He's not suspicious. I can keep him in the dark for a while," Anna had said. Lance joked, "If he gets suspicious, we can spin a story." I slammed the laptop closed, tears burning my eyes. So not only was she cheating, but she was mocking me, describing me as clueless. They wanted to manipulate me financially, or at least ensure that if she left, she'd be stable. Any love I felt for her felt overshadowed by a cold fury. The pain morphed into a quiet vow. I would not let them ruin me. If she wanted to betray me, fine, but I'd protect myself, and I would not go down gently. Over the next week, I built my arsenal of evidence. I saved the audio files, the photos, the logs of suspicious financial activity. I also talked discreetly to a lawyer, Miss Harper, who specialized in divorce cases where one spouse needed a strong defense. I didn't file anything yet. I just asked about my options. She recommended continuing to gather proof, which would help me protect my assets and refute any false claims Anna might make in court. Nights at home were surreal. Anna would laugh at some random TV show, ask me about my day. I'd respond politely, forcibly smiling, all while my heart hammered with the knowledge of her betrayal. She seemed more relaxed, probably because she thought her lies were holding up. She had no idea how thoroughly I was documenting everything. One time, she even initiated intimacy, giving me a kiss on the couch. My revulsion almost overtook me, but I forced myself to fake it. I felt sick inside, letting her do that after she'd been with Lance, but I wanted to maintain the facade. My mind was all strategy now, no real affection. I considered a direct confrontation daily. I fantasized about throwing the evidence in her face, telling her to pack up and get out. But Miss Harper's advice replayed in my head. Let her think you suspect nothing, so she's less guarded, continuing to make mistakes. Once the case goes to trial or settlement, you'll have the upper hand. During this period, I uncovered more of Lance's background. Chris found that Lance had a history of short relationships with wealthy women, though nothing that screamed open criminal record. He was apparently just a charming trainer who latched onto female clients. One or two rumors suggested he extorted money in the past, but nothing proven. Anna had become his new target. A twisted part of me almost felt pity for her, falling for a con man. But then I remembered the audio where she mocked me. No, she wasn't an innocent victim. She'd chosen to cheat. She was complicit. I felt a small flicker of satisfaction at how little they suspected me. Anna continued her routine deceptions, late client dinners, midday marketing meetups. Each time, Chris or the voice recorders confirmed a rendezvous with Lance. They started occasionally meeting at a cheap motel, too. My stomach churned at that detail. She'd truly gone that far. I forced myself to remain stoic, preparing for the day I'd unleash everything. Then came a tipping point. Late one Tuesday, I returned home unexpectedly early from work. My final meeting got canceled. I walked in to find Anna sitting at the kitchen table, phone in hand, wearing a stricken look. She almost jumped when I entered, quickly setting her phone face down. "Hey," I said casually, "you look spooked. Something wrong?" She forced a laugh. "No, just a stressful day at work." She started rambling about a meltdown with a client who threatened to pull out of some marketing campaign. The spiel was suspiciously detailed, as though she needed an elaborate story to cover her reaction. I eyed the phone. She'd definitely been texting or calling Lance. Part of me wanted to press harder, but I nodded and said I needed a shower. In the bedroom, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I rummaged for the voice recorder from the living room lamp, replaced its batteries swiftly, then put it back. Something about her face told me we were nearing a crucial juncture. Sure enough, less than an hour later, she announced she had to run back out for an emergency meeting. I pretended to swallow it. "Sure, see you later," I said, masking the bitterness. As soon as she left, I hopped into my car. Chris was on standby near her office. He texted me after 20 minutes. "She's driving west, not east." Great. Another false location. I tailed from a distance carefully. She drove to that same cheap motel on the outskirts. Heart pounding, I parked behind a fast food joint, eyes locked on the motel entrance. Lance's sedan was already there. She stepped out, looked around furtively, then hurried inside. My chest constricted. All illusions of doubt crumbled. This was raw physical betrayal, not just emotional closeness. My wife, the woman I'd loved. I felt a red haze of rage building, the urge to burst in, catch them in the act. But again, logic clamped down. I had enough, more than enough. If I wanted to be absolutely sure, I could push the door open and snap pictures. But maybe that was overkill. I gritted my teeth, forced myself to remain in my car, and texted Chris, who was parked discreetly a block away. He offered to come for backup if I wanted to confront them. I typed back, "No, not yet, soon." After about an hour, Anna left the motel. Her hair slightly messed, her cheeks flushed. She hopped into the SUV and drove off, presumably heading home to me with more lies. I sat there a few minutes, numb, until Lance also emerged, looking smug. I realized I was trembling with anger. It took all my will not to jump out and throttle him, but Miss Harper's words about cunning strategy were a mantra in my head. Handle it calmly, handle it thoroughly. The day for confrontation would come, and it would be unstoppable. I got home and found Anna pretending to be exhausted from office chaos. I nodded, plastering on a neutral expression, though inside I was reeling from the mental image of her stepping out of a motel with that man. The final puzzle piece clicked. This was no fleeting indiscretion, it was a full-blown, repeated betrayal. She was lying daily, conspiring even with Lance about finances. That night, as she slept, I quietly took the voice recorder from the living room and listened to it. There was a snippet from earlier in the evening when Anna was on the phone with Lance. "Yes, I told him I have a meeting. He doesn't suspect a thing." My stomach lurched at her triumphant tone. Lance joked back, "If he finds out, we can twist it. Don't worry." They laughed. My mind crystallized into a new plan. Not just gather evidence, but set up a bigger fall for them. They were mocking me. They thought I was naive. Let them think so. Because the moment I flip this on them, they won't know what hit them. I decided I would push the timeline. No more indefinite waiting. I'd coordinate with Miss Harper to draft the divorce papers, build an airtight case that Anna's infidelity gave me grounds to protect my assets, maybe even sue for damages if such a scenario existed in our state. The idea of humiliating them both in one swift move started to appeal to me. But first, I needed a direct confrontation to confirm my suspicions in her face, watch her reaction, perhaps record her confession. Then I'd walk away with everything, leaving her with the ashes of her choices. The heartbreak still stung, but it was overshadowed by a cold determination. I spent the rest of that night planning. The time for illusions was over. In the next few days, I'd force a scenario where she either confesses or denies in a way that I can trap her. The first act of my revenge was about to begin. That's how Chapter 1 of this dark journey came to its close. Me hunched over the dining table at 2 a.m., evidence of her affair spread across my laptop screen. Tears dried into a mask of grim resolve. If they thought I was clueless, they were about to discover just how much I'd outplayed them. I found it strangely liberating once I decided on a confrontation timeline. After days, weeks, really of simmering in suspicion and heartbreak, having a plan felt like an anchor. I'd corner Anna with undeniable proof, watch her squirm, and extract the final puzzle piece, her admission. Then I'd contact Miss Harper, finalize the divorce strategy, and ensure I left no cracks for Anna to exploit. For that confrontation, I needed a setting that would prompt her to either confess or slip. Originally, I considered doing it in our living room, but the thought of letting Lance remain ignorant of how thoroughly I'd uncovered their betrayal made me itch for something bigger. Perhaps I'd invite her to a supposedly romantic dinner out, only to spring the trap. The notion fueled me, but I also worried about public scenes. Another approach was to stage a normal evening at home quiet dinner, glass of wine, then present her with all the evidence. But first I recognized a crucial detail. Anna might lie, even in the face of pictures and recordings. She might claim it was just an emotional fling, or that Lance threatened her. I needed live, in-person, undeniable evidence of her physical relationship, so she couldn't backpedal. The motel alone was big proof, but a small, twisted part of me wanted to see them in the act or hear an explicit admission. That desire unsettled me. Was I becoming vengeful to the point of self-harm? Observing them in person would cut me deeply, but maybe I needed the raw closure. At the office the next day, I half-listened to colleagues discussing weekend plans. My mind was fixated on Anna and Lance. If she was seeing him multiple times a week, I might get that direct evidence soon. My phone buzzed around noon, Chris texting. "She's heading to the motel again." Perfect. I told my manager I was stepping out for an urgent errand. By 12:30, I was in my car, driving with a laser focus. The idea was to arrive right after them, slip inside the motel hallway, and confirm the room they entered. Then maybe I'd overhear enough to record. When I reached the motel's parking lot, I spotted Anna's SUV and Lance's sedan. My pulse pounded. I inhaled, checking my phone camera. This was the line between reason and reckless obsession. But I needed that slam-dunk evidence. I exited the car, nerves taut. The weather was damp, the sky threatening rain. I pulled my jacket tighter, stepping quickly across the asphalt, avoiding the front desk by slipping in a side entrance. Dingy corridors reeked of stale smoke. I had no idea which room they were in, but Chris had mentioned he saw them go upstairs. On the second floor, I paused, listening for voices behind the closed doors. A TV played somewhere. From another room, I heard faint laughter. This was insane. Then I caught a voice, Anna's voice. My heart hammered. I crept closer. A door in the middle of the corridor was slightly ajar, the latch stopping it from shutting fully. Muffled sounds drifted out, including a man's low rumble, presumably Lance. My stomach churned. This was it, my moment. I could push it open, confirm everything. My hand hovered near the doorknob, trembling. Suddenly, footsteps from the stairwell startled me. A housekeeping cart rattled up the hallway, the attendant humming. I ducked behind a corner, cursing my luck. The attendant knocked on a different door, then moved on. By the time I inched back, the door Anna and Lance had used was fully closed. Seething frustration washed over me. I could have barged in, but do I want to see that sight? Maybe not. Instead, I decided to wait. In my vantage point near the stairwell, I'd see them exit. That alone might be enough. 30 excruciating minutes later, the door opened. Lance stepped out first, scanning the corridor. Then Anna followed, eyes down. My phone was angled behind the stairwell corner, capturing them on video. They walked down the hall, Anna leaning into him for a quick kiss. I caught it all. Then they headed downstairs. I stayed put, adrenaline buzzing. When they were gone, I exhaled a shaky breath. That little video snippet was powerful. If Anna tried to claim it was a business meeting, well, that goodbye kiss said otherwise. Part of me felt physically ill, acknowledging the raw betrayal. Another part felt triumphant. I had them pinned, no denial possible, but the sadness overshadowed everything. This was the woman I devoted my life to. Now she was openly affectionate with another man in a seedy motel corridor. My next steps felt robotic. I left, returning to my car, and typed a message to Miss Harper. "We should meet soon. I have conclusive evidence." She responded quickly, setting an appointment for the next day. On the drive back, I realized that direct confrontation was less necessary than I thought. This video was enough. However, some dark corner of me still wanted to see her face when I told her I knew. I wanted her to witness how methodically I'd dismantle her illusions. This realization startled me. I was tasting the bitterness of revenge. That evening, Anna strolled in around 6 p.m., radiant from her long day. She kissed my cheek softly, as though nothing had changed. If only she knew the half of it. As she wandered into the bedroom to change, I followed her. I wanted to see how she acted if I gave her a slight push. Leaning against the doorframe, I asked, "How was your day?" in a gentle tone. She turned, her expression carefully neutral. Exhausting. Meetings. Phone calls. You know the drill. I gazed into her eyes, searching for a flicker of guilt. Maybe I saw a hint of it. Nothing unusual? A motel visit, perhaps? I said it lightly, a half-smile on my face. She blinked. A micro-expression of panic flashed before she forced a laugh. Motel? That's random. Where'd that come from? I shrugged. Just curious. Heard some folks from your firm might hold off-site brainstorming in weird places. A ridiculous claim, but I wanted to see her reaction. She shook her head, gave me a dismissive wave. Not that I know of. We stick to conference rooms. Her voice wavered slightly. The tension was so thick I could taste it. She was lying again. I let it drop. She probably thought she handled it well, but the slight tremor in her voice gave her away. After dinner, she retreated to the couch, scrolling her phone. I sat across, an internal tempest raging. I was on the brink of exposing her. The only thing stopping me was Missy Harper's final counsel and my desire to set up a scenario that protected all my financial and emotional interests. Around 9 p.m., Anna said she was tired, heading to bed. She offered me a light kiss goodnight. I let her do it, feeling my stomach twist at the thought of where her lips had been earlier. I managed to mutter, "Good night," and sank into the armchair, alone in the dim living room. My phone buzzed Chris. He asked if I was okay, sensing my unstable emotions. I simply replied, "We're close. Tomorrow I see the lawyer, then I decide." The next afternoon, I met Miss Harper at her sleek office downtown. She was a composed, sharp woman in her early 40s with an air of confidence. I presented the evidence I'd accumulated: photos, timestamps, audio recordings, the new motel video. She listened calmly, occasionally nodding, taking notes. After I finished, she looked at me sympathetically. "Shane, you've built quite a case. If you proceed with divorce, her infidelity is well documented. Illinois is technically a no-fault divorce state, but we can leverage the affair if she attempts to claim you were at fault or tries to demand significant assets or spousal support. The recordings and pictures might not all be admissible, but we can use them strategically in negotiations." I felt a swirl of relief. "So I won't get blindsided in settlement?" She shook her head. "Highly unlikely. In fact, if half these recordings are valid, she might settle quickly to avoid them going public. I suspect she'd want to keep her affair hidden from friends, family, or her professional circle." That notion sparked a cold satisfaction. Anna's attempt at secrecy could be turned against her. If she refused fair terms, I could threaten to expose everything. Miss Harper laid out the standard approach: file for divorce, serve her the papers, present the evidence that ensures I maintain the majority of our shared assets. Before I left, Miss Harper asked if I intended to confront Anna before filing. "Yes," I admitted. "I want her to know I'm not the fool she thinks I am." Miss Harper only advised caution, warning me not to lose my temper or do anything illegal. "Get the confrontation on tape if you can. Could be a final nail in the coffin." I walked out of that meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. The heartbreak lingered, but overshadowed by a fierce resolve. I had a plan, legal backing, and more than enough proof. Now all that was left was to watch her face as her lies collapsed. I was no longer anxious. I was systematically preparing. That night I told Anna we should have a date night on Friday, something we hadn't done in a while. She seemed surprised but pleased, likely believing it was an opportunity for her to keep me complacent. She agreed immediately. In my mind, that dinner would be where I confronted her. I'd arrange a private booth in a quiet restaurant, then present the evidence, one piece at a time. She'd have no chance to evade. Another part of me worried about a public meltdown, but Miss Harper's advice echoed, "Sometimes a public setting can keep things calmer. She can't scream or run easily." As the day approached, I found myself oddly composed. I still exchanged pleasantries with Anna, letting her believe all was normal. She continued her routine texting Lance, sneaking out for midweek rendezvous. Chris confirmed that as of Wednesday, she was still seeing him. Perfect. Let them have their last fling. My only hesitation was about how emotionally devastating the confrontation would be for both of us. But I reminded myself, she had made her bed. Let her lie in it. Friday arrived. I'd booked a table at a stylish but not a crowded restaurant by the river. Candlelit ambiance, low music. On the drive there, Anna looked radiant, wearing a sleek dress. She was chatty, speculating how we hadn't done this in ages. Possibly she thought I was a naive husband, returning to romantic gestures while she carried on an affair. We were seated in a semi-private corner. The waiter lit a small candle on the table. Anna ordered a glass of white wine. I picked a scotch. She admired the place, remarking on how lovely it was. My stomach nodded, but I forced small talk. How was your day? She launched into vague details about client proposals. Halfway through the appetizer, I set my phone to discreetly record audio. This was it. I leaned forward, voice steady. Anna, I have to ask you something. Please be honest. Her brow furrowed slightly, but she tried to maintain a relaxed smile. Sure, what's up? I exhaled. Are you having an affair? Her face twitched, eyes darting. She forced a laugh. What? No, that's crazy. Why would you? I cut her off gently because I know you've been meeting a man named Lance Morgan. In motels and cafes. I've seen you with him. I've listened to recordings, Anna. I have pictures, videos, I know everything. Her complexion paled. She froze with her fork mid-air. For a moment she said nothing, mouth slightly open. Then she tried a shaky denial. Shane, he's just a friend. I can explain. I slid my phone across the table, already cued to a short clip, the motel hallway video. Lance leaning in for a kiss. Anna in plain sight. She watched it, her breath catching. Her eyes brimmed with panic. You're stalking me? A swirl of dark satisfaction coiled in me. No, I was verifying your lies. Don't turn this on me. You've been sneaking around for weeks. Don't deny it. I have audio of you talking about me like I'm clueless, talking about finances you want to manipulate. I have everything. She stared at me in horror, then tears welled up. Her voice trembled. Shane, it's not what you think. Lance he's just someone who's been helping me cope with stress. It got out of hand, but it's not serious. I swear. I let out a bitter laugh. Not serious? The motel visits, the hush-hush rendezvous, your plan to maybe leave me? None of that is serious? Anna, you broke every vow we had. She reached across the table for my hand, desperation in her eyes. Please, let me explain. It started as a fling. I was feeling neglected. You were always working. Then it just escalated. I never meant to hurt you. A wave of anguish slammed me, hearing her justification. You never meant to hurt me, but you did. Repeatedly. You thought I'd never find out. Her tears fell now, real or fake. I couldn't tell. She whispered, I'm sorry. The tension around us was thick enough that a couple at a nearby table glanced our way. But we were still somewhat isolated. I forced my voice calm. I've spoken to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. Don't try to deny the affair or spin a story about me being controlling. I have extensive proof. She gasped, panic flooding her features. Divorce, Shane? No, this can't. We can fix this. It was a mistake. I shook my head, heart pounding. Don't insult my intelligence. You mocked me with Lance, discussing how to manipulate finances. That's no innocent slip. She started sobbing softly, burying her face in her hands. I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. I got caught up, I swear. I let her cry for a moment, ignoring the stares from across the restaurant. My chest felt heavy but resolute. The slow burn of betrayal had become a cold certainty. You made your choice. Now you face the consequences. She sniffed, raising her head, eyes puffy. But let's talk, please. We can do therapy. I'll stop seeing him. I love you, Shane. My stomach twisted at hearing that phrase. You don't get to say you love me after sneaking around for months. Love doesn't do this. She tried to defend herself in a broken, stammering monologue about how lonely she felt, how Lance was exciting. She insisted she never planned to truly leave me. The idea of finances was just talk to keep Lance from pressuring her. On and on, half-baked excuses. I listened silently, filming her meltdown in my mind's eye. When she finished, I set my napkin down. Anna, I'm done. I'll have the divorce papers served next week. Don't come up with more lies. If you want a civilized settlement, cooperate. Otherwise, everything goes public." She covered her mouth, tears streaming, whispering, "You can't do this. I can't lose you." I made a mistake. I stood up, ignoring her plea. "I've heard enough." Quietly, I signaled the waiter. He brought the check, eyeing the scene with a subtle frown. I paid in silence. Anna just sat there, trembling. We walked out into the cool night air, tension crackling between us. She grabbed my arm. "Shane, please, come home. Let's talk more." But I shook her off gently. "We have nothing to discuss tonight. Take a separate ride if you want. Or get in the car, but I don't want more discussion." Her face crumpled, but she followed me to the car. The drive back was wordless, except for her occasional sniffle. My mind spun with a mixture of sorrow and an odd sense of triumph. I had wanted to see her reaction, and I got it. She was shattered. Good. Maybe now she'd understand the magnitude of her betrayal. Back at the house, the quiet was deafening. She trailed after me into the living room, starting up again. "We have to fix this." I held up a hand. "Stop. I'm exhausted. It's late. We'll talk about logistics another time." She insisted, "Let me explain everything." I cut her off firmly. "I have all your recordings. I know about the motel, the finances. I'm done listening. Get some rest or go to a friend's. But we are not spending the night in the same bed." She froze, tears staining her cheeks. Then she mumbled, "I'll stay in the guest room." I didn't respond, just marched upstairs to our bedroom, shutting the door behind me. The emotional toll hit me like a truck. I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. Despite my outward composure, inside I was a whirlwind of grief and anger. Part of me wanted to burst into that guest room, demand more explanations, or rage at her. But I kept Miss Harper's advice in mind. Maintain control. When I finally lay down, images of Anna's tearful face haunted me. Was I certain I wanted to go through with the divorce? My mind answered, yes, because I can't trust her anymore. I also replayed her attempt at justification. Could she truly be remorseful? Possibly. But the damage was done. I slipped into a fitful sleep, half expecting to wake up to her pounding on the door. But she never came. She probably realized the futility. Morning arrived with a gray dawn. I left early for a weekend meeting with Miss Harper's office, unusual, but she'd agreed to expedite the paperwork if I wanted. Anna remained holed up in the guest room. I didn't bother telling her I was leaving. Let her wonder. In Miss Harper's conference room, I provided a detailed statement, officially starting the divorce process. She had me sign documents giving her authority to represent me. She planned to draft the petition for dissolution of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences, and if needed, we'd mention the affair. After an hour, Miss Harper looked at me sympathetically. This will likely get messy once she's served. Are you prepared for that? I nodded, though my stomach felt queasy. I'll do whatever. She can't be allowed to turn this around on me. Stepping out of the building, I took a shaky breath. So it was real now. No turning back. I texted Chris, letting him know I'd probably shift from covert evidence gathering to open legal action. He offered support, praising my calm approach. A small flicker of relief passed through me. Heading home, I wondered if Anna would be there, or if she'd run to Lance. I almost hoped she'd vanish altogether, saving me the agony of seeing her face. But her SUV was parked outside. I walked in. She was in the living room, eyes red, as though she'd been crying all night. She stood up immediately. Shane, can we talk? I set my keys down, faced her across the coffee table. Say what you need to say. Her voice trembled. I know you hate me right now. I understand. But I swear I'll cut off Lance. I'll do anything to repair us. Just give me a chance. I studied her. The heartbreak in her eyes looked genuine, but so did the desperation, likely from fear of losing everything. Anna, you've been carrying on for weeks. You told him I was clueless. You brought him into our home. Now that I'm divorcing you, you want to fix it? A bit late for that. She sank onto the couch, tears streaming anew. I was an idiot, intoxicated by the excitement. I never intended to leave you. I can't believe how selfish I was. My chest clenched. I remembered the warmth of our early years, how her laughter lit up a room. Now that image lay in ashes. It's done. I'm filing. I've already taken steps. You'll be served soon." She buried her face in her hands, her words muffled. "Please, please, can't we try counseling? I'll give you every password, every phone record." A spark of bitterness flared. "That's worthless to me now. Too little, too late." She nodded miserably, voice cracking. "I don't blame you for hating me. I'm begging you not to drag me through the mud publicly." Ah, there it was. She feared her reputation being ruined. I replied coolly, "Behave decently in the settlement, and I won't publicly release anything. Screw with me, and the recordings go to whoever they need to." She winced, whispering, "I won't fight you. I deserve whatever." Part of me found it anticlimactic she was already capitulating. I'd anticipated a battle. "Then we have an understanding," I said, voice hollow. "I'll let my lawyer handle the details. For now, I think it's best we live separately." She wiped her cheeks, nodded. "I'll pack a few things and stay with my parents for a while." That stung, recalling how her parents once adored me. They'd be shocked by all this. But my anger overcame the pity. Fine. The sooner the better. Within an hour, she'd thrown clothes into a suitcase, tears still sliding down her cheeks. I stood in the hallway, arms crossed, watching her. A swirl of conflicting emotions plagued me. Sorrow at the finality, anger at her betrayal, satisfaction that I was in control. Before she left, she approached me one last time, voice trembling. "Shane, I'm so sorry. I know I broke us. If you ever find it in your heart to forgive me," I cut her off quietly. "Don't hold your breath." She swallowed hard, eyes glistening, then slipped out the front door. I heard the SUV engine roar to life, then fade down the street. Just like that, she was gone. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. The house felt both lighter and emptier. My rational side said this was the right move. My emotional side reeled from the heartbreak. 5 years, undone in a matter of weeks. After a while, I texted Miss Harper the update, that Anna would not contest the separation for now. Miss Harper responded promptly with supportive words. "Stay strong. Let's finalize the docs next week." Chris also sent me a message. "She left? That was quick. You okay?" I typed back, "Better now that the charade is over." But better was a stretch. I roamed the quiet rooms, glancing at wedding photos, mementos of our once happy life. A lump caught in my throat. She had been my partner, my best friend. Where did we go so wrong? Then I remembered Lance, the motel, her mocking words, and the lump turned to anger. I grabbed a box and started removing her personal items from the living room shelves, photos of her side of the family, random knickknacks. I wanted them out of sight. The process was cathartic, each item a reminder that she was no longer part of my daily existence. By the time I was done, the living room looked half empty, but it also felt cleansed. Over the next few days, I settled into an odd new routine, waking up alone, having coffee alone, returning from work to an empty house. It was lonely, yes, but at least I wasn't drowning in suspicion. The divorce paperwork progressed smoothly. Miss Harper assured me that with Anna's admission of guilt and fear of public exposure, she'd likely sign an uncontested agreement. Still, a part of me braced for Lance's involvement. Would he push Anna to demand money or sabotage me somehow? So far, no sign of him. Possibly he realized the legal trouble they could face if I exposed the recordings, especially those discussing finances. One evening, Anna called from an unknown number. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. She asked if we could meet for coffee to discuss property division. I felt a jolt of annoyance. Why not just let the lawyers handle it? But maybe it was simpler to hear her out. I agreed to meet her at a neutral cafe the next day, purely for practical reasons. The cafe was near downtown. I arrived first, found a corner table. Anna entered soon after, wearing a subdued expression, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked smaller, frailer. She offered a cautious smile. I cut to the chase. "What do you want to discuss?" She sipped her coffee, voice low. "I want to avoid a nasty legal fight. I'll accept most of your terms, but I need some security. I'm not trying to extort you, I promise. I don't want to be left homeless." Despite my anger, I recognized we shared a mortgage. Legally, she had some rights. "I'm open to a fair settlement," I said evenly, "but you get no spousal support, minimal share of the home. You walked out on this marriage." Her eyes glistened. "I understand. I messed up. We can figure out the mortgage split, or maybe I'll sign off on it if you compensate me for my share. We hashed out preliminary details, surprisingly civil. She insisted again that she was done with Lance, that the affair was a huge mistake. I felt my lip curl in disdain. She admitted she'd been staying with her parents, told them partial truths. I guess she was too ashamed to fully confess. Finally, she asked softly, "Do you still hate me?" I hesitated. Hate? I'm furious, but more disappointed than anything. We could have had everything, Anna. She nodded, tears brimming. I know. I was selfish. She tried to place a hand on mine. I pulled away. We're past that. A sharp sadness gleamed in her eyes. She murmured, "You'll always be the best man I ever knew. I'm sorry." I forced a stiff nod. Thank you for that. But it changes nothing. We parted ways outside, no hugs or farewells, just a mutual acknowledgement that we were finalizing the end. A week later, Miss Harper finalized the documents. Anna agreed to relinquish most claims. She'd get a modest lump sum for her portion of the mortgage equity, and we'd split a few joint assets in a mostly token manner. I felt a sense of relief my finances were safe, my future unencumbered by her. Anna's betrayal still stung, but the immediate crisis was ending. Lance was apparently out of the picture, or at least she was telling me that. Chris told me Lance might have moved on to another target, typical pattern for a man like him. The entire fiasco left a bitter taste in my mouth, though. I signed the final agreement in Miss Harper's office, hand steady. "It's done," she said. "Just wait for the official court date, but it's essentially over." Outside, I stepped into the crisp autumn air. The chapter had ended. 5 years of marriage, undone by a slow rot of lies and an affair with a smooth-talking trainer. My shoulders felt lighter, yet my heart weighed heavy with heartbreak. I drove home, stepping into the quiet house that was now solely mine. Anna's belongings were mostly gone, except for a few leftover items. I flopped onto the couch, shutting my eyes. No more secrets, no more suspicion, just emptiness. My phone buzzed. A text from Anna. "Thank you for not destroying me. I know you could have." I stared at it for a minute, then simply powered the phone off. It was time I claimed some peace. No more tangled drama. Thus ended the immediate aftermath of my confrontation, leaving me alone but free. The slow burn had finally been extinguished in a single dinner confrontation, yet the scars would remain. I told myself I'd heal eventually, but the brand of betrayal never truly fades overnight. The paperwork might have been signed, but my emotional journey was only just beginning. In the days after Anna and I reached that settlement, I found myself in an odd limbo. Work provided a welcome distraction. Clients had no clue I was in the middle of a marital implosion. My co-workers, if they suspected anything, kept quiet. I delivered quarterly reports, made jokes in the break room, and kept my meltdown private. But every time I drove home, the house seemed too big, too silent. The ring on my finger felt like a mockery. One evening, I yanked it off, placed it on the bedside table, and stared at the slight indentation on my skin. The emotional weight of those missing grams of gold felt immense. I tried telling myself that I was better off. I was. Anna was gone, her betrayal uncovered, the divorce inevitable. Yet my heart still pounded with a dull ache whenever I recalled how we used to share laughter over silly things. The memory of her face full of tears at that restaurant confrontation haunted me. Did I do the right thing? Did I handle it with the necessary level of brutality? My rational mind insisted yes, she'd repeatedly lied. My emotional side still felt battered. A few days later, I decided to clear out more of her leftover items. I rummaged through the guest room closet where she'd stashed some boxes. One box contained old notes we'd written each other early in our relationship, photos from a trip to the mountains. The version of Anna in those photos was so warm, so loving. The difference between that woman and the cheating wife who snuck off to motels felt like whiplash. I nearly torched the entire box in anger, but then tossed it into the attic instead. Maybe one day I'd want those memories, or maybe I'd burn them later. Right now, I couldn't decide. That weekend, Chris dropped by unannounced with a 6-pack of beer. "Figured you might want some company," he said, offering me a half smile. We settled in the living room. He asked how I was holding up, and I admitted the truth. Legally, things are wrapped. Emotionally, I'm a mess. He nodded, saying he'd seen it often. Infidelity tears people up inside. As we sipped the beer, I thanked him for all his help investigating Anna's affair. He shrugged. I wish we never had to do that. But you deserve the truth. We ended up talking well into the night, about my next steps, how to rebuild. Chris encouraged me to get out more, meet new people eventually, but I wasn't ready. I told him I wanted to focus on my career for a while. He also mentioned Lance. I've heard rumors he's sniffing around another married client. The guy's not exactly discreet. A flash of anger stirred in me, but I let it go. I had no official reason to keep tabs on Lance anymore. He was Anna's problem. I did wonder if he'd try to contact me, or if Anna had cut him off fully. But Chris said no sign of him reaching out. At one point I asked, "Do you think Anna regrets it? Or is she just sorry she got caught?" Chris pursed his lips. "Maybe both. But does it matter? She showed you who she was." That struck me as a blunt truth, and he was right. Before Chris left, he clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Time, man. It takes time. You did what you had to do. Don't second-guess your own strength." His words offered a small measure of comfort. However, the peace was short-lived. One afternoon, I got a phone call from Anna's father, a man who'd once adored me for taming his free-spirited daughter. His voice was curt. "Shane, what is all this I hear about you divorcing Anna? She told us some half-story. We want to know your side." I hesitated, not wanting to drag them into the messy details. "Your daughter cheated on me. She's known it for a while. I have proof." My tone was clipped. He sputtered, She claimed you were distant, that she strayed because you neglected her emotionally. I can't believe this is happening. Are you sure there's no chance for reconciliation?" My temper flared. "Reconciliation? She carried on an affair for months. I won't pretend that's fixable." He tried to push, saying I should be more understanding, that maybe we both contributed to the marriage breakdown. I calmly but firmly repeated, "She lied. She humiliated me, and I have no trust left. The divorce is already in motion." He ended the call, clearly frustrated. I guessed Anna had given her parents a sanitized version of events, painting me as partly to blame. That stung. Even after all her admissions, she was still deflecting. But I was determined not to get pulled into a family drama. Later that night, Anna texted me an apology for her dad's interference, saying, "I didn't want them to call you. Sorry." I didn't reply. At this point, silence was my best answer. About a week after that, I woke up to a surprising phone call from my bank. The manager wanted to confirm if I authorized a request to close our joint credit card account. I had planned to do so eventually, but I hadn't yet. This meant Anna must have tried. My chest tightened. I told the manager, "No, I do not authorize that. Let me handle it personally." I quickly hung up and marched to the bank in person. Miss Harper had warned me that Anna might attempt some last-minute financial move. Once there, I discovered that Anna had called, claiming we wanted the joint account closed and the remaining credit limit transferred to her new personal card. Fury churned inside me. She'd said she wouldn't fight me financially, yet here she was, possibly trying a sneaky move. Or maybe she was just trying to remove her name. Still, the manager apologized for the confusion. I closed the account properly, ensuring Anna got zero leftover credit from it. I texted her, "Stay away from my finances. We have a settlement. Don't pull stunts." She responded with confusion. "What are you talking about? I only wanted my name off that card. I didn't try to take anything." I wasn't sure if that was true or not, so I gave a curt reply. "Talk to Miss Harper if you want changes. No more unilateral moves." These small disputes reminded me how complicated a divorce can be, even with a settlement in place. Miss Harper calmly advised me to remain vigilant until final court approval. She said Anna's or her father's attempts to meddle might continue. One evening, I started rummaging through my closet for old stuff to donate. Behind a row of shirts, I found the gift Anna had planned for our 5th anniversary, a fancy watch in a half-open box. She'd hidden it months ago, presumably when we were still good. The watch was engraved with, "To my steady rock, Love A." My chest constricted reading it. Memories flooded back. For a moment, tears pricked my eyes. She must have hidden it, waiting to surprise me before everything crumbled. Did she love me at that time? Or was that just show? I sat on the bed, turning the watch over in my hands. The bitterness welled up again. That hypocrisy. She could plan a sweet surprise, yet later betray me so thoroughly. Was she living two separate realities? I put the watch aside, unable to decide if I should toss it, pawn it, or keep it. The emotional roller coaster left me drained. People assume once the cheater is exposed, you just get angry and move on. They don't realize how your memories keep clashing inside you. Later, I wrote a short note to myself. Remember the facts, not illusions. It became my mantra. About 2 weeks after Anna moved out, I got a message from a mutual friend, Monica, the same co-worker who once called me about Anna's early departures. Monica said she felt guilty about not warning me earlier. She'd known something was off but didn't realize how serious it was. She asked if we could chat. We met at a public park near the river, the breeze carrying the scent of damp leaves. Monica looked uneasy, hands clasped together. She apologized profusely. I knew Anna was acting weird, but I never guessed it was a full-blown affair. If I'd known, I would have told you sooner. I shrugged, a bit numb. It's done. Not your fault. Anna was good at hiding it. Monica ventured. She's broken now, you know. She regrets everything, but she said you're bent on divorce no matter what. I stared at the water. She's right. There's no going back. Monica nodded. I just hope you find peace. Anna might have done a horrible thing, but she's still my friend. I'm stuck in the middle. I appreciated her honesty. We parted on good terms. Another reminder that Anna's betrayal rippled out, affecting friendships, making people choose sides. Meanwhile, Chris kept me updated if he heard any mention of Lance. Part of me was anxious that Lance might try to cause trouble, call me, harass me, something. But so far, the guy was silent. Chris suspected Lance realized Anna was no longer profitable to him. Sure enough, Anna texted me one evening to say she and Lance were over. She claimed to have told him she wanted no further contact. A flicker of cynicism told me maybe she was just saving face. But she wrote something that caught my attention. He was never worth losing you. I was a fool. I typed a short reply. Too late. Focus on yourself. Don't contact me unless it's about paperwork. Then I blocked her on my personal phone. Miss Harper had told me to direct all communications through her if possible. Blocking her felt like a final severance of personal ties. Yes, we still had a few legal steps left, but emotionally I wanted to be free. No more half-baked apologies at midnight. No more guilt-ridden pleas. The court hearing for the divorce loomed a week away. Miss Harper said it should be straightforward. We'd present the uncontested settlement, the judge would sign off, and that'd be that. I tried to steel myself for seeing Anna in a courtroom, but a swirl of tension still knotted my gut. In the days leading up to the hearing, I refocused on my job. My boss praised my performance on a major client acquisition. My colleagues teased that I was on fire. Little did they know my personal life was in shambles. Or maybe they sensed something, but politely avoided it. On a quiet Sunday, I decided to drive out to the suburbs just for a change of scenery. I ended up at a nature trail we used to frequent where Anna and I once had picnics. The memory stabbed at me. I found a secluded bench, sat down, and tried to let the fresh air clear my head. That's when I realized something crucial. My sense of self wasn't solely tied to Anna's betrayal. I'd existed before her, and I would exist after her. Yes, she'd inflicted a deep wound, but I could heal. Slowly, determination welled up. The day of the divorce hearing arrived with a chilly morning drizzle. I dressed in a crisp suit, ignoring the feeling of dread in my stomach. Miss Harper and I met outside the courthouse. She gave me a reassuring nod. Inside, I spotted Anna seated on a wooden bench, looking drawn and pale. She wore a conservative blouse, her eyes flicking to me nervously. I avoided direct eye contact. The hearing was quick. The judge reviewed the settlement, asked Anna a few questions. Are you agreeing to this of your own free will? She responded quietly, Yes, Your Honor. He asked me if I was satisfied with the terms. I affirmed. No mention of the affair was necessary because we'd hammered out everything privately. The judge gave a final look, then announced he found the settlement fair and granted the dissolution. Just like that, 5 years of marriage ended in less than 10 minutes. Anna glanced at me once more, tears welling. I caught the flicker of heartbreak in her gaze, but I forced a neutral expression. Then the judge declared court adjourned, and we stood. Miss Harper gently guided me out the door. Anna lingered behind, possibly trying to gather her composure. Outside the courtroom, the air felt electric. Miss Harper shook my hand. "Congratulations, if that's the right word. You got a good outcome." I nodded. "Thank you for everything." She reminded me that any final documents or clarifications would be mailed. Then she left. I walked down the corridor, footsteps echoing. Part of me wanted to turn back, see if Anna was still there, but I resisted. Let her handle her own regrets. The chapter was done. Exiting the courthouse, I looked up at the gray sky. The drizzle cooled my cheeks. A swirl of relief, sorrow, and numbness coursed through me. The slow burn that had begun weeks ago had ended in a quiet, anticlimactic hearing. But it was final. I was free of the marriage that had become a lie. That afternoon, I sat alone on my living room couch, the official decree resting on the table. My phone was silent, no more frantic texts from Anna, no drama. I was single again, battered but alive. Over the coming weeks, I'd rebuild myself piece by piece, forging a new identity out of the ashes of that betrayal. Deep down, a flicker of satisfaction told me I hadn't lost everything. My finances were intact, my dignity largely preserved. Anna's illusions were shattered. Her affair with Lance presumably turned to dust. The entire fiasco had left me with scars, but also with a backbone of steel. I exhaled, a slow, steady breath. The storm had passed. Now began the process of truly moving forward. In time, maybe I'd dare to trust again. For now, it was enough to have survived the slow burn and come out stronger, even if my heart still carried a bruise. Sometimes it's staggering how quickly a life can be dismantled. Just a few weeks earlier, Anna and I were sharing the same bed, albeit in a tense, suspicious hush. Now she was gone from the house altogether. The official divorce process was rolling forward. I had parted with illusions of pity. Still, I wasn't naive enough to believe she'd accept defeat so easily. In those first few days after Anna moved out, I stuck to my routine like it was a life raft. Mornings began with me ironing a crisp shirt, downing strong black coffee, and driving to my financial firm downtown. My colleagues didn't suspect a thing on the surface. I was the same meticulous consultant, punctual with client briefs and quick to return calls. But inside, the turmoil simmered. One morning, I arrived at my desk to find a letter slid under my keyboard. No return address, just my name scrawled on the envelope. I had a sudden, unwanted jolt of adrenaline. Anna had tried to contact me a few times through random texts, but we'd agreed to filter any communication through our lawyers. Opening the letter felt like prying off a bandage. Inside, the handwriting was shaky, definitely Anna's. She wrote about regrets, about how none of this should end in a messy divorce, how she was willing to try counseling. My jaw clenched at the word counseling. She'd never once brought that up before I discovered her affair. If she truly wanted to fix things, she wouldn't have mocked me with Lance in private emails. I tossed the letter into a drawer without responding. Maybe I'd pass it to my attorney, Miss Harper. She'd know what to do. With that, I forced my focus back to the files on my desk. I refused to let Anna's manipulations rattle my professional composure. That same evening, I decided to do a deeper sweep of the house. Even though Anna was no longer around, I didn't want any overlooked time bombs in the form of leftover personal documents or suspicious items linking us financially. Over the years, we'd had a habit of stuffing random paperwork into cabinets. I started in the master bedroom closet, rummaging through old shoeboxes. One box contained a stash of postcards we'd collected on vacations, an old photo of me and Anna laughing by the Grand Canyon. I stared at it for a moment, trying to reconcile the carefree couple in that picture with the acrimony we had now. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, a mix of anger and sorrow. The memory of her betrayal overshadowed any sense of nostalgia, though. Moving on, I discovered a small satchel filled with receipts from the last 6 months. My heart thumped when I noticed charges at restaurants and bars I'd never visited with her. Lounge Bell, Riverfront Bistro, Cottage Inn, dates that aligned suspiciously well with nights she claimed to be working late. Evidence upon evidence. I placed these receipts into a separate folder. I'd let Miss Harper decide if they were relevant to the divorce or any potential claims on shared finances. The more I found, the more resolute I became. Anna had spun a grand tapestry of deceit, and each new clue only steeled my resolve to see this through. A few days later, Chris, my ex-law enforcement friend, invited me out for a late dinner. We met at a low-key pub downtown. Chris was the only person besides Miss Harper who knew the full extent of what had happened. As soon as I sank into the booth, he studied me with a concerned eye. "Still holding up?" he asked, sipping a light beer. I shrugged. "It's a process. But I'm not backing down. The divorce is in motion, and Anna's trying these last-ditch attempts to contact me. Letters, random pleas. My attorney says to ignore them unless they relate to finances." Chris nodded, leaning forward. "From what I've heard through the grapevine, Anna's living with her parents now." He paused. "And I heard she might still be in contact with Lance." I felt an uncomfortable jolt at the mention of that man's name. Despite all that had blown up, I wouldn't be shocked if Anna was clinging to Lance. But a flicker of twisted relief passed through me if she was still with him. It only strengthened my case in the divorce. "Any intel on that front?" I asked carefully. Chris shrugged. "Rumor is Lance is laying low. He's a gym trainer and self-styled influencer, but he's apparently got a reputation for seducing wealthy women. Anna's parents might not realize just how deep that runs. If she's still associating with him, it could be another disaster for her." I felt no sympathy. She'd chosen that path. If she wanted to double down, so be it. "Let her bury herself," I muttered. Chris gave me a tight smile. "Just watch your back, man. Lance might feel cornered if your divorce triggers anything bigger like a lawsuit or a fraud claim." I nodded, heart pounding with a certain thrill, because that was exactly where my mind had begun to wander. The possibility that Anna and Lance did more than just cheat. If they'd siphoned funds or messed with my financial records, I would find out soon enough. My suspicion about potential fraud escalated when Miss Harper asked me to gather all bank statements from the past year. As I scrolled through the transactions online, I spotted a few wire transfers I didn't recognize. They were small enough not to have raised major flags, but big enough to matter. 2,000 here, 3,000 there, transferred out of our joint account into an account with a partial name A. Barnes. My blood ran cold. Anna had a separate bank account under her maiden name, apparently. She might have been skimming money. This was bigger than infidelity. It was a direct financial betrayal. Rage welled up inside me, but I forced myself to maintain control. I compiled screenshots, printed bank statements, and handed them off to Miss Harper the next morning. She assured me we could use these records to strengthen my position in the divorce. If Anna had taken funds without my permission, that was borderline theft. "That's not the only thing," Miss Harper said, tapping a pen on her desk. "If Anna and Lance conspired to do this, we might be looking at potential criminal charges. Are you prepared to go that far?" I exhaled. "If it means getting them off my back, yes. She violated my trust completely. I won't stand by if there's a crime here." A flicker of surprise crossed Miss Harper's face. I guess she'd never pegged me as someone so resolute, but I was done playing nice. Anna had orchestrated not just heartbreak, but actual financial sabotage. Let her deal with the consequences. Late one evening, I found myself at home, alone, rewatching some of the old hidden camera clips. I knew it was masochistic, but I wanted to confirm whether there was any hint of Anna or Lance mentioning money specifically. Sure enough, in one clip, Anna rummaged through my home office drawers while Lance hovered behind her. The audio was muffled, but I caught fragments. Anna: "He never checks these statements thoroughly. We can slip a few more out next month." Lance: quiet laugh. "Man, this is too easy." My chest constricted as I pressed pause. My ex-wife Toby had conspired with another man to bleed my accounts. It was sickening. All I'd seen before were hints of an affair. This was on another level. And if they'd bragged about it once, they likely repeated it. I sank onto the couch, fists clenched, heart pounding. The heartbreak I'd felt was now overshadowed by cold fury. They had robbed me in my own home, while I was out working to support us. If that wasn't worth pursuing legal retribution, what was? I forwarded the clip to Miss Harper. She replied an hour later, "This is significant. Let's get the ball rolling on a more aggressive approach." Within a week, Miss Harper filed a motion to freeze certain assets. My personal accounts were safe, thanks to my prior caution, But the leftover joint account was locked, pending investigation. This move must have blindsided Anna. One afternoon, my phone rang. Her name popped up. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Shane, what are you doing?" Her voice was tight, on the verge of panic. "Why can't I access any money for my personal expenses?" I took a steadying breath. "Should have thought of that before you started siphoning funds. Don't call me again. Talk to your lawyer." Her tone wavered. "That's not fair. I just took some for personal use. It's not like I stole everything." My laugh was humorless. "You're unbelievable. You cheated on me with Lance, took money behind my back, and you think it's not that serious? Wait until the court sees those recordings." She went silent, probably realizing I had cold, hard proof. Then a quiet sob. "Shane, please," I ended the call. That final note of desperation in her voice did nothing to move me. Maybe once, I would have felt pity. Now, all I felt was a resolve to see justice done. The next major escalation happened when Miss Harper discovered that Anna's new bank account was jointly named with Lance. That was the account receiving the wire transfers. It appeared he'd sweet-talked her into funneling money for some investment. This revelation left me speechless for a moment. Anna had let him in so deeply that they were co-owners of a secret account. I met with Miss Harper in her glass-walled office, my emotions roiling beneath the surface. "How can two people be so brazen?" I asked, shaking my head. "They literally left a paper trail." She folded her hands. "Some con artists get overconfident. Lance likely guided her, thinking you'd never notice. Well, they just gave us ammunition." We discussed the possibility of pressing criminal charges. It was a big step. Part of me worried I'd be seen as vindictive. But the more I thought about Anna's smug lies, the more I realized I had nothing to lose. She'd already destroyed our marriage. She was the one who escalated it to theft. If the district attorney decides to prosecute, Anna and Lance could face felony fraud charges, Miss Harper said calmly. "You understand that might lead to jail time?" I stared out her office window at the bustling city. "Yes," I said finally. "Let them face the consequences." My life became a balancing act between my demanding job and the unfolding legal drama. On the surface, my client still saw me as the unflappable financial consultant who never missed a beat. But behind closed doors, Miss Harper and I were exchanging daily calls, gathering evidence, building the case. Chris quietly helped from the sidelines, using his law enforcement contacts to confirm whether Lance had a prior record. Turned out, Lance had a string of minor infractions, mostly related to fraudulent claims. Nothing huge, but enough to paint him as a repeat offender if this case went to trial. One evening, Chris and I grabbed dinner again at that same pub. Over plates of wings, he handed me a small folder. "A buddy of mine dug up these public records. Lance was sued by an ex-girlfriend for financial misconduct about 2 years ago, settled out of court." I flipped through the pages. "He's a predator," I muttered, a chill creeping up my spine. "He zeroes in on women who can be manipulated?" Anna was just another mark. Chris nodded. Except Anna went along with it wholeheartedly. That was the dagger of truth. Anna wasn't an innocent puppet, she was complicit. I thanked Chris for the intel. Each piece of evidence was another nail in their coffin. About 2 weeks later, Miss Harper informed me that the district attorney's office was taking an interest in the case. The recorded footage, the suspicious wire transfers, the existence of a secret account, they all pointed to potential conspiracy to commit fraud. If the DA pressed charges, Anna and Lance could be indicted. One part of me felt a flicker of guilt. This was Anna, the woman I once loved, facing prison time possibly. Then I recalled the stolen money, the vile mockery, the emails calling me boring and clueless. My sympathy vanished. She'd made her bed. Word must have reached Anna. Late one night, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw her standing there, eyes puffy. Against my own better sense, I opened it a crack, chain still latched. She stared at me, trembling. "Shane, please, we can handle this privately. Let's not involve the DA. I swear I'll return every cent." I kept my expression stony. "You're a little late for that, and you never asked me before taking that money. There's no more let's handle this." Her voice broke. "I messed up. Lance fed me all these promises, and I believed him. But I never meant to fully abandon you." I snorted bitterly. "You said a lot more than that in your emails. How you couldn't wait to leave me once you got enough money. Don't rewrite history. Tears trickled down her cheeks. I was stupid, okay? But please, if you push this criminal thing, I could go to jail. I didn't budge. You should leave. This conversation is pointless. I closed the door in her face, hearing her choked sob on the other side. Maybe once I'd have cracked, not anymore. That night I laid awake for hours, replaying her tearful face at my doorstep. It stirred conflicting emotions, grief for what we once had, and anger for how she'd trampled on it. But as dawn broke, a strange calm settled over me. I realized that everything was on an unstoppable path now. The divorce was nearing finalization. The DA was investigating. Anna and Lance had done enough damage to themselves. I merely provided the receipts. And if she dared to blame me for exposing her crimes, well, that was on her. I rose, showered, and pulled on a fresh suit, feeling a renewed determination. This was the next phase, forcing her and Lance to face the consequences of their joint betrayal. No matter how many tears she shed, I wouldn't fall for it. That part of me that once loved her was gone, replaced by a cold resolve to see this through. I stepped into my car, started the engine, and drove to work, mind already spinning with the steps to come. Soon Anna would discover just how thoroughly she'd dismantled her own life, and the darkest part of me admitted it. I felt no remorse about that. There's a strange, surreal quality to watching the spouse you once adored spiral into potential criminal charges. Even though I was the aggrieved party lied to, cheated on, stolen from, I sometimes questioned if I was the villain, pushing matters into the legal realm. But each time that doubt crept in, I reminded myself of the raw facts. Anna had shown no remorse until she got caught. She only pleaded for mercy when cornered. The next step came swiftly. Miss Harper called me early on a Thursday, her tone brisk. The DA's office wants to meet with you this afternoon. They'd like to go over the evidence in person. This could mean they're preparing to file charges. My stomach fluttered. Do I need to bring anything? Just yourself, Miss Harper replied. We already provided them the recordings and financial records. They might want your statement on the record. That day at work was a blur of spreadsheets and phone calls I barely registered. My mind kept drifting to the impending meeting. By 3 p.m., I was seated in a modest conference room at the county prosecutor's office. The DA, a sharp-eyed woman named Delgado, greeted me politely but with an air of focused intensity. Miss Harper sat beside me while Delgado laid out the gist. We have sufficient grounds to believe Anna Barnes and Lance Morgan conspired to defraud you. Bank records, hidden camera footage, all quite damning. My office is prepared to file formal charges, but we want to confirm your willingness to cooperate fully. My heart pounded. Yes, I am. I'll testify if needed. Delgado gave a tight nod. Be advised, pressing charges against a spouse can get messy. However, this is no simple domestic dispute. She created a separate account with Lance, siphoned funds, and had the nerve to discuss forging your signature. We can't ignore that. I inhaled slowly. This was it, conspiracy, forgery, theft. The magnitude was sobering. Understood, I said. She chose this path, not me. Delgado's gaze flicked to Miss Harper. We'll proceed. Likely a grand jury will convene soon. Expect subpoenas, and if this goes to trial, we'll want you front and center. Nerves flared in my gut, but I set my jaw. I'm ready. That evening, I mulled over the repercussions of pressing charges. A close friend from college, Gabe, who'd recently learned about my crumbling marriage, tried to reach out with concern. Over a beer, he asked, "Do you really want her locked up, man?" His question made me pause. Did I want that? Honestly, it wasn't about wanting her in prison, it was about holding her accountable. If Anna had simply broken my heart, maybe I could have let it go. But she'd also stolen from me, ridiculed me, conspired with Lance. She did this to herself, I told Gabe quietly. If the DA sees enough evidence for criminal charges, that's on Anna, not me. He sighed. You're right. Just it's wild how everything flipped so fast. I remember when you two were basically the perfect couple. A bitter laugh escaped me. We obviously weren't as perfect as we seemed. In the end, Gabe just patted my shoulder, offering a sympathetic nod. The entire situation was beyond his realm of comprehension. Some betrayals were too deep to fix with a half-hearted apology. Within a week, news reached me that Anna and Lance were indeed indicted by a grand jury. The indictment alleged conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted grand larceny. Miss Harper told me the maximum sentence could be years in prison if convicted. My mind reeled at the thought. Anna locked away, that was something I'd never envisioned, not even in my darkest nightmares. But my emotional reaction was more subdued than I'd expected. A certain numbness had taken root. The heartbreak had burned out, replaced by a resignation that this was how life had turned out. The slow-burn rage I once felt was now a cold acceptance. I had a role to play as the victim, and ironically, the star witness if this went to trial. Anna must have panicked. Through Miss Harper, I heard that Anna's new attorney had proposed a plea bargain. If she pled guilty to a lesser count and returned the stolen money, maybe she'd avoid a lengthy prison term. Lance's stance was unclear. Rumors said he was pushing Anna to take the fall alone. Typical. "Do we accept her plea?" Miss Harper asked me over the phone. I rubbed my temples. "It's not entirely up to me, right? The DA has the final say." "Yes, but the DA will factor in your wishes. If you're opposed to a lenient deal, they might go full throttle. If you're open to letting her plead, that might reduce everyone's stress." I hesitated. Part of me wanted them both hammered with the maximum penalty. Another part recognized that a plea deal might finalize everything without a circus trial. Eventually, I told Miss Harper, "I'll let the DA decide. I'm not endorsing leniency, but I won't block it either." That was my compromise. Let the system do its job. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were accelerating. The financial revelations had left Anna in a dire position. My side demanded the house, full retention of assets, and no spousal support. She'd lost her job at the marketing startup when her legal troubles surfaced. There was no way she could maintain any claim on my finances if the court recognized the theft. One afternoon, Miss L. Harper called me with surprising news. "Anna's lawyer says she's willing to relinquish nearly everything in exchange for you dropping the civil fraud claim." I blinked. Dropping the fraud claim? That's separate from the criminal case, isn't it? Technically, yes. But she's hoping if you stop pushing civil damages, it might influence the DA's perspective. I almost laughed at the audacity. So she wants me to back off, so she can maybe get a lighter criminal sentence. And in return, she'll let me keep what's rightfully mine anyway. Great deal. My voice dripped with sarcasm. Miss Harper was more measured. "It's a strategic move on her part, but you're correct, most of this is rightfully yours. Her theft makes it clear." We decided not to give an inch. I refused to sign any agreement that let her off the hook for the money she stole. My stance was firm. Anna had to face the consequences, both in the divorce and in potential restitution. During this period, I found myself drawn to re-examining every piece of digital evidence. The hidden camera videos still made my stomach churn, seeing her and Lance rummage through my desk, sneering about how oblivious I was. The text messages where she told him how easy it would be to pull more money from me. Each replay fueled my conviction that no, I wasn't the villain. This was simply justice. One night, as I rewatched a particularly galling clip, Anna saying, "He's so boring, it's no wonder I found you," while Lance smirked, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. I'd given her years of stability, love, and effort. She reduced me to boring. I closed the laptop, a bitter taste in my mouth. The heartbreak threatened to resurface, but I strangled it with logic. This woman had chosen her path. My sense of betrayal had matured into a calm, steely determination. If she wanted mercy, she should have shown me some earlier. Around that time, Chris showed up at my doorstep unannounced with a six-pack of craft beer. We settled in my living room, half-lit by the late evening glow. He asked how I was holding up with the legal onslaught. I explained the indicted charges, the looming trial or possible plea bargain, the divorce settlement tipping in my favor. Chris nodded thoughtfully. "You're winning on all fronts, man. But I also see how exhausted you are. The best revenge might be stepping away and living well." I considered his words. "I hear you, but a part of me wants to see them both face the hammer in court. Then I can truly move on." Chris understood, though he cautioned me about letting anger consume me. "I just want you to come out of this with your sanity. Don't let Anna's betrayal define your entire life." He was right, of course, but I had to see it through. I couldn't let her or Lance slip away to manipulate the narrative. I wanted a formal, public reckoning if that's what the DA pursued. Finally, the day arrived for our next major divorce hearing. This was the session where the judge would review the distribution of assets. I dressed in a tailored suit, arriving early at the courthouse. Miss Harper waited in the hallway, scanning her notes. Anna showed up escorted by her attorney, looking pale and worn. She cast me a pleading glance as if hoping for last-minute mercy. I avoided her eyes. We filed into the courtroom. The hearing was more straightforward than I'd imagined. Miss Harper presented the evidence of financial wrongdoing bank statements, partial transcripts of the recordings. Anna's lawyer tried to minimize the damage, claiming Anna only took a small portion, but the judge's disapproval was visible. In a calm, measured voice, Miss Harper laid out the timeline. How Anna conspired with Lance to open a secret account, transferring funds behind my back. She cited the ongoing criminal investigation as context. Anna's lawyer had little to counter except weak pleas for leniency, referencing Anna's unemployment. The judge's ruling was swift. I was awarded the house, the bulk of the remaining joint assets, and Anna was to receive a nominal portion only if she agreed to sign over any claim to further spousal support. She stared down at the table as the judge hammered the gavel. In that moment, I saw the final collapse of everything Anna once took for granted. Outside the courtroom, Anna cornered me, tears in her eyes. "Shane, I know I don't deserve it, but please, can we talk?" I folded my arms. "We have nothing left to talk about." She looked so desperate. "I'm losing everything. The least you could do is hear me out." A spike of anger flared. "Did you hear me out when you planned to siphon my money? When you mockingly called me dull? When you invited Lance into our home for your little schemes?" Her face crumpled. She whispered, "I was stupid. I never intended to ruin you. You were selfish," I interjected, voice steady. "And now you're facing the consequences. This conversation is over." She tried to grab my arm, but I sidestepped and strode away. Miss Harper gave me a nod of solidarity, clearly impressed by my composure. Once I might have caved under Anna's tears, but that man was gone. That night, alone in the house I now fully owned, I sat at the kitchen table sipping a glass of whiskey. My gaze fell on a framed photo of me and Anna from our honeymoon. The laughter in that picture was genuine. I remembered how blissful we were, standing on a beach, arms around each other. I carefully removed the photo from its frame, placed it in a box with a few other relics. Then I sealed the box shut. Maybe one day I'd look at them again, but for now, they were just reminders of a life that no longer existed. Outside, the city lights glimmered. The hush of night wrapped around me. Tomorrow, the sun would rise on a new reality, one where Anna had no power over me or my future. The law was on my side, and her illusions had crumbled. I finished the whiskey in a single gulp, letting the burn ground me. As of today, I was standing on the edge of the final act where Anna and Lance would face not only the divorce's outcome, but also the possibility of criminal trial. The slow burn of betrayal had turned into a raging fire that consumed them both, and I felt no guilt about that fact. Waking up the next morning, I realized I hadn't slept so soundly in months. My mind was oddly at peace, as if my subconscious finally believed that Anna's grip on my life was loosening. Still, I had to remind myself, the criminal case was heating up. If the DA proceeded, I'd likely be called to testify against Anna and Lance. I spent that morning reviewing every piece of documentation Miss Harper had sent me. Emails, bank statements, transcripts of hidden camera audio. A sense of finality coursed through me. This was no longer just a personal vendetta. It was a legitimate case of fraud and attempted theft. Anna had earned every ounce of the coming storm. Around noon, Miss Harper called. "Shane, I just got word that Lance is doubling down on blaming Anna. His lawyer is floating the idea that Lance was misled by your wife, that she orchestrated the funds transfer, and he simply went along for the ride." I barked a humorless laugh. Of course, she told me he promised the world, but I see how loyalty goes both ways for them. He claims to have emails proving Anna was the mastermind. Whether that's true or not, expect them to turn on each other. That same evening, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated but picked up. A male voice I recognized from the hidden camera audio sneered through the line. "Shane, isn't it? I think we should have a little talk." It was Lance. My heart pounded. "How did you get this number?" Anna gave it to me months ago, he said, casual as if discussing the weather. Anyway, I hear you're all riled up about pressing charges. Think carefully, man. We could resolve this without a trial. Anger flared. Resolve this? You stole from me, manipulated my ex-wife. The DA is the one pressing charges. He scoffed. Stop playing the victim. Anna's told me how you neglected her. She came to me. We just took some money, no harm done, right? I gritted my teeth, reminding myself to remain calm. No harm done? That's your justification for forging my signature and funneling thousands out of my accounts. Lance's tone turned menacing. You drag me into court. I'll make sure Anna blames everything on you. I can spin a story about you being abusive, controlling. Hell, I might plant some rumors among your colleagues. Do you really want that? My hand tightened on the phone. Threaten me all you want. I have more evidence than you can imagine. He hesitated, possibly surprised by my steadfastness. Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. Anna might be weak, but me? I won't go down quietly. I hung up before he could continue. My pulse hammered. Lance was desperate, and that made him dangerous. But if he thought intimidation would work, he had no clue who he was dealing with now. Not long after that unsettling call, I sat down with Chris again. We met at a 24-hour diner. The neon lights flickered off the rain-soaked pavement outside. Chris sipped his coffee, expression grave as I recounted Lance's threats. Lance is clearly flailing. People like him who rely on manipulation get sloppy when cornered. You should watch for more attempts calls, letters, even weird rumors, Chris said. I nodded. I'm not scared of him. I just don't want him blindsiding me at work or hurting my professional reputation. Chris leaned forward. Given his track record, I doubt he has any real leverage. But it might be worth alerting your boss or HR that there's a disgruntled individual out there, just so they know if some random accusations pop up. The thought of exposing my personal saga to the office made my stomach twist, but I saw the logic. Yeah, maybe a heads-up would be smart. I'll frame it as a minor security concern. Chris's eyes flickered with concern. Look, man, I've seen folks like Lance escalate to physical confrontation if all else fails. Keep your doors locked, watch your surroundings. A chill slid down my spine, but I forced a small nod. I appreciate it. Believe me, if he tries anything, I won't hesitate to call the police. We parted ways in the drizzling rain, my mind buzzing with the realization that this wasn't just about court documents anymore. Lance was a cornered con man, and cornered con men sometimes lash out. A few mornings later, as I stepped out of my house, I found a piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. It read in sloppy handwriting, "Drop the charges or else." The nerve. My first reaction was pure fury. I photographed it, then called Chris. "It's obviously from Lance," I said. "No one else would be so blatant." Chris agreed. "File a police report. This might be evidence if he tries anything else." So that's what I did. At the local precinct, I spoke with an officer who took my statement. They classified it as a harassment incident, made a note that Lance was a suspect. Part of me felt surreal my everyday life had turned into a low-level crime thriller. One thing was clear. Lance was too stupid or too cocky to realize this only strengthened the case against him. If he thought intimidation would break me, he'd miscalculated. In fact, it hardened my resolve tenfold. That afternoon, Miss Harper contacted me with a mixture of relief and urgency. "The DA has formally scheduled a pretrial hearing in 2 weeks. Anna's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal, but Lance's side is refusing, claiming innocence." I exhaled. So it might actually go to trial? Likely. If Anna cooperates, she might get a reduced sentence. Lance is determined to fight it. But given the evidence, I doubt he has a strong defense. I considered the possibility of testifying in open court, facing Anna and possibly Lance, detailing their betrayal. The idea felt like an emotional minefield. Yet I also craved that final, definitive moment where the truth was laid bare. "Okay," I said quietly. "Let them fight. I'll do my part." Miss Harper paused. "Just be prepared Anna might turn on Lance fully, or Lance might drag Anna through the mud. They could each spin new versions of the story. We'll keep your role factual, direct. The evidence is on our side." A slow breath left me. "Understood." I tried to maintain normalcy at work, but the undercurrent of stress ran deep. I gave my boss a discreet warning that a disgruntled individual might attempt spurious accusations. My boss was surprisingly supportive. "If anything arises, we'll back you up. Just keep doing your job as excellently as you have been," he said. One evening after a particularly long client meeting, I lingered at the office, double-checking some accounts. The fluorescent lights cast a sterile glow over my desk. A memory of Anna popped into my head back when she'd teased me for working too hard. Now I realized that was just one more piece of her scapegoating, painting me as neglectful. In truth, I'd been providing for us. I left the building around 8 p.m., tension pooling in my shoulders. My phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. My heart hammered as I read it. "You keep pushing, you'll regret it. E." Instead of replying, I forwarded it to Chris and Miss Harper. Then I blocked the number. If Lance wanted to threaten me from the shadows, I'd compile every snippet of harassment for the authorities. He was basically handing me more ammo. In the midst of this, a surprising ally emerged. Monica, one of Anna's former friends. She reached out apologetically, wanting to meet in a public cafe. I remembered Monica as the co-worker who once casually mentioned Anna's absences. I agreed, curious what she had to say. We sat by a window, the bustle of downtown around us. Monica looked uneasy. "I know we were never close, but I feel bad. I saw signs Anna was lying about her schedule. I should have said something sooner." I sipped my coffee, studying her face. "No blame on you. Anna was the one who betrayed me." Monica nodded, relieved. Then she lowered her voice. "Anna confided in me a few times about Lance. She bragged about how easy it was to get money from you. I brushed it off. I didn't think she'd go this far. Now she's in deep trouble, and I guess I wanted you to know I'd testify if needed." That last statement made my pulse quicken. "Testify about what exactly?" She frowned. "I have texts from Anna. She joked about forging your signature if you ever got suspicious." I didn't think she was serious at the time, but now she trailed off, remorse in her eyes. I felt a wave of gratitude that someone was stepping up. "This could be huge," I said. "The DA will want that. Thank you, Monica." She exhaled. "I just wish Anna hadn't dragged us all into this mess. She changed so much." In that moment, I realized Anna had alienated many people around her. Her parents, her co-workers, even her best friends were distancing themselves. She was reaping the consequences of her manipulations. A few days later, Miss Harper arranged a meeting with the DA's team so Monica could hand over those texts. I was present as well, quietly observing. The content was even more damning than I'd expected. Anna had explicitly typed, "Shane's too straight-laced to notice if I sign his name on small transfers. He trusts me with finances. I can do it in a pinch." Reading that turned my stomach. I'd never realized how boldly she'd flaunted her plan to Lance and even to a friend. The prosecutor's expression was grim satisfaction. This was the kind of concrete evidence that juries love. As we left the DA's office, Monica gave me a sad smile. "I'm sorry for not telling you earlier. She was my friend, but I never approved of all this." I shook my head. "I appreciate you coming forward now. It might seal the case." She hesitated, looking pained. "I know, but it also might seal Anna's fate in prison." I didn't have a comforting response. Anna had sealed her own fate the moment she'd decided I was an easy mark. Meanwhile, the divorce was all but finalized. The judge had awarded me everything I needed, and Anna's only recourse was to wait for the final decree. With no assets left to cling to, she was living off her parents, presumably drowning in shame. From what Miss Harper heard, Anna's parents were furious with her for the damage to their family name. One afternoon, I decided to take a drive to clear my head. I ended up cruising past the modest suburban home where Anna was supposedly staying with her parents. Just a passing glance from the street, there was no real reason to do it, except curiosity. The curtains were drawn, the front lawn meticulously kept. For a second, I pictured Anna inside, pacing in fear of the looming trial, cursing Lance, cursing me. I felt neither pity nor satisfaction, just emptiness. We'd once shared so many hopes for the future. Now she was inside that house, watching her life unravel. Part of me wanted to say it didn't have to be this way. Another part recognized she'd forced this outcome. I drove on, the wind from the open windows blasting away any lingering doubts. As the pre-trial date approached, tension coiled in my gut like a snake. Chris doubled down on his caution for my personal safety, worried Lance might try something desperate. I installed a simple security camera at my front door, but no new threats emerged, just radio silence. Maybe Lance realized intimidation had failed. Miss Harper prepped me for the hearing. They'll ask you basic questions: how you discovered the theft, your relationship with Anna, your knowledge of Lance. Stay factual, calm. I nodded. I can do that. I have all the receipts, literally and figuratively. Inside, a faint dread still lurked. Testifying meant reliving every gut-wrenching detail. But it also signified the final step in severing all ties. If that hearing led to a full trial, so be it. I was ready. On the eve of the hearing, I sat in my living room, a single lamp illuminating the legal files. I thought back to the first day I sensed something was amiss. The faint cologne in the living room, the Lance's gym keychain. That was the seed that grew into this monstrous betrayal. I closed the file, letting out a breath that felt like I'd been holding it for months. Tomorrow, I'd walk into that courtroom as a man who refused to be a victim. Anna and Lance had tried to outsmart me, conning me financially, breaking my trust. But in the end, the slow burn of suspicion had ignited a blaze they couldn't outrun. No matter what they threw at me next, I knew I'd stand firm. That certainty washed over me like a calm wave. The final showdown was near, and I was more than prepared to face it. I never imagined I'd live to see the day when both my wife and her lover ended up behind bars. Yet there I was, standing on the front porch of my newly sold house, watching as the moving truck pulled away with the last of the furniture. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and loneliness. Officially, I was free. Anna had been hauled off in handcuffs after the sting at the bank, and Lance soon followed. The ensuing legal drama had moved at lightning speed. Indictments, a bail hearing, frantic attempts at plea bargains. By the time the dust settled, they were both stuck in the county lockup awaiting trial. What I didn't anticipate was how the aftermath would linger like a stale odor. Even after removing Anna from my life, changing the locks, dissolving the marriage, my mind kept flashing back to random moments. A smell of unfamiliar cologne in the living room, or Anna's bright, false smile whenever she pretended everything was normal. But I refused to be a victim. Standing on that porch, feeling the chill of early winter air, I reminded myself that this was exactly what I'd planned. I'd orchestrated a near-perfect takedown. Anna and Lance had practically walked into the trap with arrogance painted on their faces. Now it was time to tie up the loose ends. The next morning, I left the empty house keys in the mailbox for the realtor and climbed into my car, heading downtown. I had one more meeting with Miss Harper, my attorney, to finalize a few loose threads in the civil lawsuit against Anna, namely restitution for the funds she siphoned off. If the criminal trial went as anticipated, that restitution would be guaranteed. I revved the engine, telling myself that after this day, I'd never look back at the suburban streets that once felt like home. Miss Harper's office was on the 25th floor of a sleek high-rise near the Chicago River. I rode the elevator in silence, adjusting my collar in the mirror. My reflection stared back, eyes shadowed by months of stress, but sharper, somehow resolute. She greeted me with a warm, professional smile. "Shane, come in. We have some updates." The floor-to-ceiling windows flooded her office with pale winter sunlight. I sat down at a glass-topped table stacked with files. "Good news first," Miss Harper began, flipping open a folder. "Given the evidence from your private investigator, plus the police sting, the criminal case against Anna and Lance is strong. The prosecutor has no intention of offering them sweetheart deals." I nodded, crossing my arms. "What's the timeline look like?" She exhaled. "We're a few weeks out from the official trial start date. Pre-trial motions are basically done. The judge has denied every attempt from Lance's lawyer to dismiss the charges. Anna's lawyer keeps hinting she was coerced, but we both know that's a reach." My jaw tightened. The memory of Anna forging checks with Lance still played on a loop in my head. "She's desperate," I said flatly. Miss Harper gave a sympathetic half-smile. "As for your part, the DA wants you to testify about the money transfers, the bank sting, the credit card statements. Standard questions about how you discovered the affair and the theft. Expect them to poke at your personal life, but I doubt they'll get far. The evidence is too solid. Let them poke, I muttered. I have nothing to hide. A brief flicker of admiration crossed her face. Precisely. Now, regarding the civil aspect, our motion for restitution is essentially uncontested. Once Anna's convicted, it'll be straightforward to reclaim the stolen funds from any assets she has left. I scoffed. Assets she has left. She can't have much. Lost her job, lost the house, parents are furious. Lance never had real money either, just illusions. Miss Harper nodded. Even so, it's important we get a formal judgment. If Anna ever tries to earn money post-prison, you'll be first in line for restitution. I inhaled deeply, glimpsing the Chicago skyline through the window. Fine by me. As I rose to leave, Miss Harper touched my arm lightly. Remember, these next few weeks might feel like a slog. Emotional tension, waiting for the trial, possibly local media sniffing around. Keep your composure. You've come this far. I forced a wry smile. Don't worry. If I survived living under the same roof as a lying cheat who planned to rob me, I can handle a trial. She nodded, and I left, footsteps echoing in the marble hallway. That evening, Chris, my ex-law enforcement friend, invited me out for a quick drink. We met at a small bar near my old neighborhood, one of those places with worn leather stools and sports highlights flickering on TV screens. Chris gave me a pat on the back as soon as I entered. Heard you're about to finalize the house sale. Congrats, man. I grunted in acknowledgement, sitting beside him. Yeah, it's a bit weird, letting go of the place, but I can't stay there. Too many memories. He sipped his beer. You might find the move liberating. A fresh condo somewhere else, maybe downtown or near the lake. You deserve a complete reset. I stared into my glass of water. Yeah. Miss Harper says the criminal trial starts soon. Honestly, that's the last big obstacle. Once Anna and Lance are sentenced, I trailed off, not sure how to finish. He placed a hand on my shoulder. You'll be free. The weight of that word, free, resonated in my chest. Freedom from Anna's manipulations, from the heartbreak, from the seething anger that once controlled me. Yeah, I said softly. I guess so. Chris leaned in, lowering his voice. Just keep an eye out. A cornered criminal can be dangerous. Lance might try to throw something at you, last-minute smears or threats. I thought about the possibility of Lance stirring up trouble, even from jail. I'm not worried about him physically, but he's the type to run his mouth, sure. Maybe blame everything on Anna or me? Chris nodded, a grim expression crossing his face. Just be careful. Folks like him can lash out when they realize the jig is truly up. If you see anything suspicious, give me a call. I appreciated the concern, but doubted Lance had any real power left. He was in jail, and his so-called influencer career was destroyed. The only thing he had left was hatred. Still, I promised Chris I'd remain vigilant. The next few days brought a sense of eerie calm. The house sale proceeded smoothly, with a closing date set for the end of the month. I packed my belongings methodically careful to avoid glancing too long at old photos of Anna and me. I did come across a few keepsakes, souvenirs from vacations, birthday cards she'd once written with genuine affection. My chest tightened each time, but I forced myself to toss them into a cardboard box labeled trash. One afternoon, I took a break from packing to scroll through social media. I rarely used it, but curiosity nagged at me. What was the public sentiment about Anna or Lance? A quick search revealed a handful of local blog posts, fitness influencer and mistress charged in fraud scheme, or shocking details emerge in bank heist attempt. The comment sections were split between mocking Lance's arrogance and pitying Anna's downfall. None of it mentioned me by name, just references to the wealthy husband. That suited me fine. I had no interest in being a public figure. I closed the laptop, running a hand through my hair. Let them gossip. Let them speculate. The reality was simple. Anna had tried to break me financially and emotionally, but she'd only succeeded in destroying herself. As I resumed taping boxes, I felt a flicker of guilt. Once upon a time, I'd truly loved Anna. Did she deserve prison? The memory of those hidden camera videos answered that question. She'd laughed at me, mocked me, called me dull and clueless, all while forging my signature. If that wasn't a reason to face legal consequences, I didn't know what was. I cranked up some background music to drown out the swirling thoughts. I needed to keep my head clear for the upcoming trial. A couple of days later, Miss Harper called me with an unexpected update. "Shane, Anna's attorney reached out again. They're practically begging for a plea deal." I paused in the middle of bubble wrapping a framed piece of artwork. I thought the DA was against giving them anything lenient. She made a clicking sound with her tongue. "Exactly. The DA's office sees Anna as equally culpable as Lance. But her lawyer is throwing out phrases like emotional distress, battered wife syndrome, which is nonsense, given we have no evidence of you ever harming her. They're flailing, trying to salvage her from a harsh sentence." I exhaled, annoyance prickling the back of my neck. Even now, she's looking for shortcuts. If she was truly sorry, she'd have come clean from the start. Miss Harper's tone was calm. "The DA knows that. They're not likely to reduce the charges drastically. At best, Anna might get a slight break if she testifies fully against Lance. But given the mountain of proof, the difference might be minimal." "Let her scramble," I replied tersely. "I won't stand in the way if the prosecution wants to use her testimony. But I'm not endorsing any leniency." Miss Harper agreed. "Good. We stick to the plan. The trial begins in roughly a week, so rest up and be prepared." "Will do," I said. My mind churned with mixed feelings as I ended the call. Anna's desperation didn't surprise me, but a small voice inside wondered if she was truly remorseful or just scared. Probably the latter. That evening, I made the mistake of revisiting some of the old messages on Anna's laptop. Part of me knew it was self-inflicted torture, but I wanted every last scrap of resolve before walking into that courtroom. In one email to Lance, dated just a month before the bank sting, she wrote, "He's so gullible, it's almost sad. I can't wait to start a new life once we drain his accounts." I stared at the words until they blurred. My stomach roiled with a potent mix of betrayal and anger. She'd called me gullible. Maybe I was, back then blinded by trust, by the assumption that my wife wouldn't betray me so coldly. But I'd learned quickly, and now she was behind bars. A bitter laugh escaped me. "Was it worth it, Anna?" I whispered to the empty room. "Was Lance worth throwing everything away?" Slamming the laptop shut, I reminded myself that in just a few days I'd testify in court. I'd face Anna and Lance one last time. Let them see that I was no clueless mark, they were the fools who had walked into my carefully laid trap. The day before the trial, I found myself at the new condo I intended to rent, a sleek high-rise overlooking a stretch of lakefront. It was everything my old suburban house wasn't. Modern, minimalistic, free of memories. A friendly leasing agent named Tara guided me through the final paperwork. "Sign here," she said, pointing to a line on the lease agreement. "We'll need first and last month's rent, along with the security deposit." I chuckled inwardly at the irony I was signing legitimate documents this time, not forging anything behind someone's back. "No problem," I replied, scribbling my signature with careful strokes. Tara smiled. "We're excited to have you. This building is pretty quiet, mostly professionals. You'll have plenty of privacy." Privacy. A concept I once took for granted until Anna and Lance shattered it. "Privacy sounds perfect," I murmured, returning the pen. On my way out, I paused in the lobby, watching the reflection of Lake Michigan in the glass doors. The trial would start tomorrow. Anna's face, tear-streaked, flickered in my mind for a moment. Then I shook it off. I had a fresh start waiting for me, right after I closed the final chapter of our twisted saga. Trial day 1 dawned gray and cold. I dressed in a dark suit and tie, forcing down a piece of toast even though my stomach churned with anticipation. This was it, the day I'd look Anna in the eye and recount every detail of her betrayal. Chris had offered to drive me to the courthouse, but I declined. I needed the solitude of the ride to steady my thoughts. The city streets were congested as usual, but my mind was somewhere else. I kept mentally reviewing the evidence, the timeline, the phone logs. The DA had prepped me, but a part of me still felt the anxiety that I might falter on the stand or let my emotions show. By the time I parked near the courthouse, my pulse was hammering. I took a few slow breaths, recalling the calm that had guided me through the sting operation. This was no different. I just had to remain composed. Inside, the corridors were bustling with lawyers, clerks, and anxious families. I spotted Miss Harper near the security line, her expression purposeful. We exchanged nods, no words needed. I passed through the metal detector and entered the assigned courtroom. Rows of wooden benches and a judge's bench loomed, flanked by the American flag. My eyes flicked to the defense table. Anna and Lance sat there, each with their respective attorneys. Anna looked smaller than I remembered, hair pulled back in a harsh bun. Lance fidgeted, jaw tight. For the briefest second, Anna glanced at me, her expression an odd mix of regret and pleading. My stomach twisted, but I hardened my gaze. She'd made her choice. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge, a stern-faced woman named Cartwright, took her seat. The room fell silent. Case 5749, People versus Anna Barnes and Lance Nichols, the clerk intoned. Showtime. Opening statements took up most of the morning. The prosecutor, a determined man named Delgado, laid out the state's case. How Anna and Lance conspired to steal from me, the hidden camera footage, the bank sting, everything. Listening to his measured words brought a surge of vindication. Anna's lawyer tried to spin the story of a lonely wife manipulated by a smooth-talking trainer. Lance's lawyer depicted him as a hapless lover led astray by a conniving married woman. The contradictions would have been comical if the stakes weren't so high. I caught Anna staring at me a few times, tears glistening in her eyes. Whether they were real or a performance, I couldn't tell. Lance avoided looking in my direction altogether, which was fine by me. Eventually, the judge recessed for lunch. Miss Harper signaled for me to remain calm as we filed out. In the hallway, I found a quiet corner to breathe. My phone buzzed with a text from Chris. "Stay strong, you're doing great." Yeah, I thought. So far, so good. Afternoon session came quickly. The prosecutor began calling witnesses. First, the bank manager who confirmed the suspicious check attempt, then the detective who supervised the sting, then the private investigator, Brooke, who testified about the hidden cameras. Each piece of evidence built an unassailable wall around Anna and Lance. I sat there, heart thudding, waiting for my turn on the stand. Finally, the bailiff announced my name. I rose, walked to the witness stand, and took an oath. My eyes flicked briefly across the courtroom. Miss Harper's encouraging nod, the prosecutor's steady gaze, Anna's trembling hands, Lance's hardened stare. Delgado approached. "Mr. Shane, can you describe the circumstances under which you discovered suspicious activity involving your joint accounts with Mrs. Barnes?" I cleared my throat. Yes, it started with small red flags, unexplained charges, a keychain labeled Lance's Gym, late nights where Anna claimed to be working. Then I found direct evidence of funds being transferred to an unknown account. As I spoke, my mind transported back to each instance. Anna's evasive answers, Lance's mocking tone on the camera footage. I kept my voice measured, detailing how I set up the hidden cameras, how I collaborated with the bank for the sting operation. Delgado guided me through each point methodically. When I recounted the moment I saw Anna and Lance forging checks on camera, the courtroom was hushed. Even Anna's lawyer looked deflated. "Did Mrs. Barnes ever express remorse or come clean before the arrest?" Delgado asked. I steadied my breath. No. She was planning to take the money and run, as far as I could tell. There are emails and recorded conversations to that effect. Delgado nodded, stepping back. "No further questions, Your Honor." Then came the defense's cross-examination. Anna's lawyer tried to paint me as neglectful. "You said you often worked late, correct? Did you show your wife affection, emotional support?" I held his gaze. "I provided financially, spent time together when possible. She never approached me about feeling lonely or neglected. Instead, she chose to plot behind my back." He attempted to ruffle me by implying I was controlling. I responded calmly, pointing out that if I'd been controlling, Anna wouldn't have had so many opportunities to slip away. Finally, the lawyer gave up, sinking into his seat. Lance's attorney tried a similar angle, suggesting Lance was merely Anna's pawn. I calmly restated the evidence, how Lance bragged in text messages about forging checks, how he urged Anna to open a secret account. When it ended, I stepped down, my heartbeat roaring in my ears. I resisted the urge to glance at Anna or Lance. I'd said my piece, let them squirm. The judge recessed for the day. As I left the stand, Miss Harper touched my elbow, whispering, "Excellent job. They can't refute a thing. I just nodded, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Tomorrow the trial would continue with more witnesses, but my role was done. I'd laid bare the entire twisted affair for the court. Somewhere behind me I heard Anna's quiet sob. I didn't look back. The next morning I arrived at the courthouse earlier than needed. I hadn't slept much the night before. Memories of testifying lingered, swirling with relief and bitterness. Now I stood in the hallway by a vending machine, sipping coffee that tasted of burnt plastic, trying to steady my nerves. I spotted Miss Harper stepping off the elevator. She offered a reassuring smile. Day 2. We'll see how their defense teams scramble. My stomach tightened. Do you think Anna will take the stand? She adjusted her briefcase. Likely. Her lawyer is pushing the narrative that Lance coerced her, and Lance, from what I hear, wants to pin everything on her. It'll be a spectacle. I nodded grimly, tossing the half-empty coffee cup in the trash. Let them fight each other. The evidence is overwhelming. Still, a part of me felt uneasy about witnessing Anna's possible emotional meltdown on the stand. Even after everything, I remembered the woman I once loved, but I forced that thought away. Love didn't excuse her conspiracy to drain my accounts. We entered the courtroom. The usual hush fell as the bailiff did a roll call. Anna and Lance were let in, wearing the same ill-fitting suits as before, shackles around their ankles. The trial resumed with the prosecutor calling a few more witnesses. A financial forensics expert to confirm the signature forgeries, a representative from the Marketing Association testifying that no Milwaukee seminar ever existed on Anna's stated dates. Anna fidgeted the entire time, her lawyer scribbling furiously on a legal pad. Lance stared at the floor, jaw set, occasionally whispering angrily to his own counsel. Around mid-morning, Anna's lawyer stood. Your Honor, the defense calls Anna Barnes to the stand. A ripple passed through the courtroom. I felt my pulse spike. This was it, the moment Anna might try to salvage herself by rewriting history. She rose, hands trembling, and took the oath. Her eyes flicked around, finally landing on me. I kept my expression neutral. Her lawyer began gently. Mrs. Barnes, can you describe your mental state during the events in question? Anna's voice wavered. I was lonely. Shane worked so much I felt invisible. When Lance showed me attention, I got swept up in it. I never planned to hurt Shane. Lance pressured me. My jaw clenched. Miss Harper touched my arm, a silent warning not to react. The lawyer pressed on. So you claim Lance pushed you to forge checks? She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. He said it would be easy. He had experience. I was scared of him, but I went along because I was desperate for affection. A pang of old hurt struck my chest. Desperate for affection? She'd found that by mocking me with Lance, by ridiculing me in emails. The gall. The prosecutor rose for cross-examination, voice steady as he approached. Mrs. Barnes, can you explain these emails you sent to Lance, calling your husband boring and clueless? She winced. I was venting. I said awful things out of frustration. Frustration or contempt, Mrs. Barnes, because this email states you can't wait to leave once you've siphoned enough money. That sounds more premeditated. Anna's face flushed. I was influenced by Lance's manipulations. He made me believe we could have a fresh start. The prosecutor slid a printout onto the podium. This message is from you to Lance. He's so dull, it'll be hilarious when we drain him dry. Is that correct? Anna averted her eyes. Yes, but I regret it now. The prosecutor pounced. You regret it only because you got caught, isn't that true? Her silence spoke volumes. She sniffled, whispering, I never wanted it to go this far. My stomach twisted at her half-lies. She wanted to play the victim, but the evidence was clear. She'd been a willing partner in crime. The prosecutor ended with, no further questions. Anna stumbled off the stand, tears streaking her face, but the jury's expression remained impassive. Next, Lance's lawyer stood. The defense calls Lance Nichols. Lance strutted up, trying to appear confident. I could almost smell the desperation emanating from him. He took the oath, then faced the defense attorney, arms crossed. His lawyer wasted no time. Mr. Nichols, how did you become involved with Anna Barnes? Lance's voice had a forced calm. She approached me at my gym. Talked about how unhappy she was. I thought we were just having fun, you know? I didn't realize she wanted me to help steal from her husband. I snorted under my breath. Miss Harper shot me a cautioning glance. Lance continued, "She was the one who said, 'Let's forge the checks.' She even bragged that Shane never paid attention to finances. I was naive." Naive. My mind replayed the videos of him guiding Anna's hand, showing her how to replicate my signature. The defense attorney feigned concern. "So you're saying Anna orchestrated the entire scheme?" Lance nodded vigorously. "Absolutely. She told me how to sign his name, yes, but it was her idea. She claimed she just needed my help physically writing it, that she'd done it before. She used me." I clenched my teeth. He was trying to paint Anna as the mastermind, conveniently forgetting the texts where he bragged about scamming wealthy wives. The prosecutor rose for cross-examination. "Mr. Nichols, do you recall sending a message to Anna that said," and I quote, "curve his signature like this, and we're golden?" Lance fidgeted. "I mean, I was just following her instructions. She asked me to demonstrate how I'd done it in the past." "In the past? So you forged signatures before?" His face paled. "That's not what I meant." The prosecutor flipped through more documents. "Or what about this text? Let's vanish to Miami once we pull the last chunk of money. Did Anna force you to write that?" Lance's eyes darted around, sweat beading on his forehead. "She said we'd run away together. I was just going along. Yet we have hidden camera footage of you in Shane's home, rummaging for financial documents, telling Anna to move quickly so we can skip town. Care to explain how that was her idea?" He stammered. "She insisted we do it. I might have suggested a timeline, but it was all at her request." A sneer tugged at the prosecutor's lips. "The jury can decide who was truly in charge. No further questions." Lance stalked off the stand, his composure shredded. Anna shot him a furious glare, clearly hating that he'd pinned the entire fiasco on her. She looked ready to explode. With both defendants' testimonies done, the court moved on to final witness statements and rebuttals. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice. Anna and Lance avoided each other's eyes, each convinced the other had betrayed them. I silently observed from the gallery, marveling at how far they'd fallen. During a short recess, Miss Harper and I stepped into the hallway. "They're tearing each other apart up there," she said, low-voiced. I leaned against the wall, exhaling. Good. If they'd stuck together, maybe they could have spun a more consistent story. This is just humiliating for them both. She nodded. "After closing arguments, the jury will deliberate. Given the overwhelming evidence, I expect a swift verdict. Are you prepared for the possibility they might try to do last-minute pleas?" I shrugged. "If they do, it's out of my hands. The DA isn't giving them much leeway. Let them scramble." We returned to the courtroom for closing arguments. Anna's lawyer tried to evoke sympathy. A miserable wife led astray, seduced by a charismatic con man. Lance's lawyer portrayed him as a starry-eyed lover, manipulated by a cunning wife who wanted to drain her wealthy husband. Neither argument resonated with the jury, from what I could gauge. The prosecutor's closing was crisp, highlighting each piece of evidence: the text messages, the camera footage, the bank sting, the prior suspicious wire transfers, and their contradictory blame game. "Ladies and gentlemen," he concluded, "Anna Barnes and Lance Nichols conspired willingly to commit fraud and larceny. Their own words, their own actions, seal their guilt. Don't let them muddy the waters with half-truths and finger-pointing. The evidence stands clear as day." The judge gave final instructions. Then, the jury was led out to deliberate. A hush fell over the courtroom. I let out a long breath, feeling as if I'd been holding it for weeks. Miss Harper touched my elbow, nodding encouragingly. Court recessed. We stepped into a side hallway where Chris was waiting, arms folded. He gave me a small grin. "They're done for, man. The jury probably won't take long." I hoped so. My chest was tight with anticipation. Part of me wanted to witness Anna's reaction the moment the verdict came down. Another part felt numb, as though the worst had already passed. 2 hours later, surprisingly short for a case like this, the bailiff announced the jury had reached a verdict. We all hurried back into the courtroom. My heart hammered, hands damp. Lance's face was grim, and Anna looked on the verge of tears. The judge asked the foreperson to read the verdict. The foreperson, a middle-aged man, stood and cleared his throat. "On the counts of conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and attempted grand larceny, we find Lance Nichols guilty. We find Anna Barnes guilty." A ripple of shock and murmur spread through the small gallery. Anna let out a strangled sob, burying her face in her hands. Lance slumped, rage twisting his features. I exhaled, a wave of relief and sorrow mingling in my gut. It was done. Chaos ensued. The judge revoked bail, meaning Anna and Lance would remain in custody until sentencing. Anna's lawyer tried to console her, but she seemed inconsolable, wailing that she never meant for it to end this way. Lance spat curses, cursing Anna under his breath, claiming she'd led him to ruin. I stood still, a swirl of police officers, attorneys, and reporters around me. Miss Harper placed a hand on my shoulder. "Congratulations," she whispered. "They're going away." I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat that I couldn't quite swallow. Maybe it was the finality of it all, knowing that Anna, the woman I once shared a life with, would wear prison garb for years. She'd chosen her path. As the officers led them away, Anna dared to look my way. Tears streaked her cheeks. Her lips moved silently, maybe an apology. I just stared back, expression unreadable. Then she was gone, escorted through a side door, shackles clinking. Lance followed, face full of hate, throwing a final glare at me before disappearing into the corridor. Chris murmured, "He'll get what's coming in prison. Don't let him haunt you." I nodded, letting out a slow breath. I won't. The judge announced a sentencing date in a week's time. Miss Harper told me that given the guidelines, Anna might face 3 to 5 years, Lance possibly 5 to 10, especially with his prior record. I felt no joy, just closure. Over the next week, I tried to return to normal life. The trial's whirlwind left me emotionally drained. People at my office congratulated me quietly, obviously aware of the fiasco, but politely not prying. I immersed myself in work, finalizing reports, trying to outrun the lingering echoes of betrayal in my mind. Chris checked in a few times, offering to grab drinks or watch a game. I appreciated his concern. Some nights I'd lie awake in my new condo, the city lights filtering through the blinds, replaying Anna's tear-stricken face as the verdict was read. A tiny voice whispered, "Could we have saved the marriage if you'd caught it earlier?" But that voice was drowned by the weight of her own words in those emails, her mocking laughter in the hidden camera footage. She'd gone too far. One evening, Miss Harper called to confirm I'd be present at the sentencing hearing if needed for a brief victim statement. I hesitated, but ultimately said yes. Maybe it would give me that final release to speak my piece, though a part of me wondered if I owed her any more words at all. Finally, the day arrived. A sense of déjà vu washed over me as I stepped into the same courthouse, same hallway. But this time, the outcome was already determined. We were just sealing it with a judge's gavel. The sentencing hearing was shorter than the trial, but in some ways more intense. Anna and Lance appeared in prisoners' jumpsuits, looking worn out from their time in county lockup. The prosecutor summarized the recommended sentencing guidelines. Anna's lawyer begged for leniency, citing her first-time offense, and claimed that she was under emotional distress. Lance's lawyer tried to spin a tale of temporary madness. Neither argument held much weight. Judge Cartwright frowned from her bench, flipping through notes. Both defendants participated in a carefully planned attempt to defraud the victim. This was no momentary lapse. The evidence shows clear intent and conspiracy. Her gaze flicked between Anna and Lance. "Mr. Nichols, given your prior record of fraudulent activity, I see a pattern of manipulative behavior. Mrs. Barnes, while you may have been influenced by Mr. Nichols, you also displayed callous disregard for your husband's trust." My chest tightened. The judge continued, "Therefore, I sentence Mr. Nichols to 7 years in state prison. Mrs. Barnes, 4 years in a women's correctional facility." A wave of commotion rippled through the small crowd. Anna's family seated behind her gasped. Lance slumped, cursing under his breath. Anna let out a cry, shaking her head in despair. The judge banged the gavel. "Court is adjourned." I stood there, numb. 4 years for Anna. She'd be in her mid-30s when she got out, presumably with a felony record and no future in marketing. Lance faced 7 years. He'd be pushing 40-something by the time he saw freedom again. Chris hovered at my side. "They got what they deserved," he murmured. I nodded. "I know." Anna's parents glared at me from across the aisle, as if it were my fault their daughter had made such horrific choices. Her mother looked ready to say something, but her father shook his head, guiding her away. I guess they realized confrontation was pointless. Officers led Anna toward the exit. She stumbled, eyes red from crying. For a moment she locked gazes with me, mouth opening as if to speak. But the officer nudged her forward, and she was gone. Lance followed, fury etched into every line on his face. He spat something inaudible, probably a last insult or threat. Another officer shoved him along, ending that final drama. Miss Harper patted my arm. "It's over. Truly this time." I swallowed hard. Yeah. Walking out of the courthouse into the midday sun felt surreal. I half expected Anna to appear behind me, calling my name. But she was gone, off to the correctional system. The entire ordeal had culminated exactly as I'd orchestrated. She and Lance had torpedoed themselves. I just provided the evidence. That evening, Chris hosted a small gathering at his apartment. Just a few co-workers and friends. A low-key celebration, acknowledging the end of the fiasco. People sipped drinks, murmuring about how they always suspected Anna was trouble or how Lance was a creep. I accepted the sentiment with a tight smile, not in the mood for a party. Eventually, I found a quiet corner on Chris's balcony, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Miss Harper. "Congrats on the closure. Reach out if you need anything." Closure. Such a neat word for a messy, painful story. I typed a brief thanks, pocketed my phone, and stared at the skyline. The ache in my chest was less about loss and more about the realization that I'd spent years with someone who was capable of such betrayal. But I also felt an undercurrent of relief. I was free completely. Chris joined me, handing me a beer. "You did it," he said, raising his bottle. I clinked mine against his. "We did it. Couldn't have pulled it off without your insight." He shrugged. "All I did was confirm Lance's background. You were the mastermind of that sting operation." A faint smirk crossed my lips. "Guess so." He studied me for a moment. "What's next?" I exhaled slowly. "I'm selling the house. Probably moving into that new condo near the lake. Focus on my career, maybe take up a new hobby, and let myself breathe for once." Chris nodded approvingly. "Sounds good. You deserve some real peace." Below us, traffic glided by in ribbons of red taillights, the hum of the city a distant lullaby. I sipped the beer, the crisp bitterness a welcome anchor. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to contentment. From now on, Anna's presence in my life would be nothing but a cautionary tale, a memory of a woman who chose greed and deception over loyalty and love. And Lance? He could rot in prison with his grand illusions of gym fame and easy scams. I was done. With the sentencing behind me, I embarked on a new chapter. My old house sold quickly. Some eager couple with a penchant for suburban living scooped it up. I signed the final paperwork at a title office, watched them beam about their dream home, and handed over the keys. The irony wasn't lost on me. That place had nearly been my grave, metaphorically speaking, if Anna had succeeded in her plan. Now it was someone else's fresh start. Good riddance. Meanwhile, I settled into my new condo near the lake. High ceilings, big windows, modern furniture, a complete departure from the cozy, warm decor Anna and I had chosen together. The first night, I slept on a brand new mattress in an otherwise half-furnished bedroom. No ghosts, no memories, just quiet peace. That Monday, I strolled into my financial firm's downtown office, drawing a few curious stares from colleagues who'd caught wind of the trial's outcome. I nodded politely, heading straight to my desk. Productivity was my coping mechanism. Within hours, I was immersed in client portfolios, drafting proposals, forgetting for a moment about the betrayal that once consumed me. The world kept spinning. Clients still needed advice, and I had no intention of letting my personal drama overshadow my professional life. At lunch, my boss, Mr. Delgado, no relation to the prosecutor, ironically, called me into his office. He was a genial, middle-aged man with silver hair and a fatherly demeanor. He gestured for me to sit. "I've been hearing good things," he began, leaning forward. "Clients commend your composure through difficult times. You've handled your personal crisis with admirable professionalism." I managed a small smile. "I appreciate that, sir." He nodded. "In light of recent developments, we'd like to offer you a larger role, more responsibility. perhaps a position overseeing a new team. It'll come with a salary bump. Surprise flitted through me. I'd be honored. Thank you. He chuckled. Don't thank me yet. It's a ton of work. But we believe you're ready. This firm values resilience, and you've shown plenty. A wave of relief and pride mingled in my chest. After everything Anna had tried to do, my career was intact, better than intact. I left his office feeling lighter, as though each step took me further from the shadow Anna had cast. That evening, I returned to my condo to find a housewarming gift basket at my door. A note read, "Welcome to the building. Tara, leasing agent." A small kindness, but it brought a smile to my face. I set the basket on the marble countertop, rifling through the assortment of snacks and a bottle of wine. My phone buzzed with a text from Chris. "Dinner Friday?" I typed back, "Sure, my treat." Then I paused. Maybe I should invite a few more people, expand my circle. The old me had been all about routines, often neglecting social ties. But the fiasco taught me that life can blow up in your face unexpectedly. Sometimes you need a network of real friends to keep you steady. I was about to text some coworkers when another message popped up from Miss Harper. "Congratulations on the job news. Quick update. Anna's attorneys emailed about possible restitution terms. Are you free tomorrow?" Restitution. Right. Anna owed me for the stolen funds and attempted forgeries. It felt anticlimactic now that she was already in prison, but I'd follow through. Every part of me wanted to move on, but maybe finalizing that restitution would be the last nail in the coffin. The next morning, Miss Harper and I sat across from Anna's new attorney in a sleek conference room. The attorney, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, set a folder on the table. "My client, Miss Barnes, is prepared to sign over any future earnings from assets, including her share of the marital house sale, though that was minimal after the mortgage payoff. She hopes this satisfies Mr. Shane's claim." I exchanged a glance with Miss Harper. We both knew Anna had almost nothing to give. But the principle mattered. Miss Harper leaned forward, tapping the folder. "We appreciate the gesture. However, we also want an official acknowledgement of wrongdoing, so no confusion arises down the road." The attorney sighed. "She's already convicted. The wrongdoing is on record." I spoke up quietly. "Let's just get it done. I want no illusions later that she can claim innocence in civil matters." She nodded. "Understood." We hammered out the details. Anna would forfeit any future claims against me, relinquish any leftover accounts in her name, and pay a token sum whenever she gained legitimate employment post-release. Miss Harper typed up the final wording. I signed. Then the attorney took it with a resigned expression. As we left, Miss Harper turned to me. "This is purely symbolic. You won't see real money from her." I shrugged. "I know. I don't need her cash. Just the closure." She gave me a grim smile. Closure. That's what this is all about. I left the building, stepping into crisp afternoon air. Another chain severed. That weekend, I finally hosted Chris and a few others, some co-workers, and a couple old college friends for a casual dinner at a trendy bistro. A low hum of conversation filled the space, warm lighting reflecting off polished wooden tables. They toasted me with beer and wine, congratulating me on my new condo, my promotion, and quietly acknowledging the end of the Anna saga. I appreciated their tact. No one delved into lurid details. They knew it was a painful subject. During dessert, a coworker asked, "So, any plans for a vacation, Shane? You've been through a lot. Might be good to unwind somewhere tropical." I considered it. A month ago, the idea of traveling alone sounded depressing, but now it stirred a spark of excitement. Maybe. I'm thinking about Europe, or even a national park. Still deciding. Chris smirked. "If you need a buddy, I'm down for a road trip." I laughed genuinely. I'll keep that in mind. The dinner ended on a cheerful note. I walked back to my condo, the city lights glimmering around me, feeling a sense of camaraderie I'd lacked for ages. With Anna gone, I realized how much I'd isolated myself. She'd been my entire world until that world crumbled. Now I could rebuild, better than before. A few days later, Miss Harper sent me a final update. Sentencing is complete. Restitution agreement is signed. The case is effectively closed. The word closed glowed on my phone screen, beckoning me to step into a future unburdened by Anna's betrayal. I strolled to the lakefront that evening, wearing a light jacket against the autumn chill. Waves lapped at the shore, and joggers passed by with rhythmic footsteps. I found an empty bench, letting the wind whip across my face. My mind drifted to Anna's whereabouts. She'd be in a correctional facility by now, probably adjusting to the harsh reality of prison. Lance would be in a separate men's facility. No chance for them to console each other. They were each other's downfall, so maybe that was fair. I inhaled deeply. The crisp air tasted like possibility. For so long, I'd felt defined by Anna's betrayal, driven by revenge. Now that revenge had played out perfectly, leaving me unexpectedly free. The question was, free to do what next? I watched the horizon fade into twilight, a gentle hush over the water. Perhaps I'd travel, as my coworkers suggested, or maybe invest more time in hobbies I'd ignored. For once, I didn't have an urgent plan, and that felt strangely liberating. An unexpected call came from an old high school friend, Derek, who'd heard rumors about my recent fiasco. He lived in Denver now and invited me to visit. "I've got a spare room, man. We can go hiking, catch up. It's been forever." I hesitated only briefly before agreeing. A spontaneous trip, a shift from my usual careful planning. It seemed right for this new phase of my life. A week later, I boarded a flight to Denver. The plane soared through cloud banks, and I stared out the window, heart surprisingly light. Once we landed, Derek greeted me with a boisterous hug at the airport. Over the next few days, we drove winding mountain roads, hiked trails that led to panoramic vistas. The altitude stole my breath, but the scenery revived something inside me. Towering pines, crisp mountain air, a feeling of being small in the face of nature's grandeur. At a lookout point, Derek asked gently about the fiasco. I gave him the condensed version. Anna's affair, the stolen money, the sting. He whistled, shaking his head. "Damn, man, that's intense." I shrugged, gazing at distant peaks. "Yeah, but it's behind me now. I learned a lot about people, about trust, and about what I'm capable of." He gripped my shoulder. "Well, I'm glad you came out on top. Most guys might have folded under that pressure." I allowed a small laugh. I guess I had no choice. It was either crumble or fight back. Standing there, inhaling pine-scented air, I realized how far I'd come from the man who first suspected Anna was cheating. I was stronger now, sharper, and strangely I felt gratitude that I'd discovered her betrayal before it was too late. Returning to Chicago, I found a voicemail waiting from a number I didn't recognize. The voice was shaky, female. "Shane, it's Monica. Not sure if you changed your number, but I have news. Anna asked me to pass along a message from prison. She says she understands if you never forgive her. She just wants you to be happy." I listened in silence, a mixture of annoyance and pity swirling in my gut. I couldn't recall giving Monica my new number, so maybe Chris had done so inadvertently. Regardless, I had zero interest in hearing Anna's regrets. She'd made her bed. I deleted the message without responding. I refused to let her worm her way into my mind again. The next morning, I texted Chris a curt thanks for presumably passing on my number to Monica, adding a gentle reminder that I didn't want updates from Anna. He apologized, saying he only gave Monica my number to coordinate something about Lance's earlier threats. I let it go. I had bigger things to focus on: my new role at the firm, potential travel, maybe a new hobby. Anna's chapter in my story was closed. In the weeks that followed, life took on a strangely normal rhythm. I woke early, jogged along the lake, then headed to the office. Evenings were spent reading, sometimes meeting friends for drinks or dinner. The memory of Anna and Lance receded like a distant nightmare. One Saturday, while shopping for groceries, I bumped into Brooke, the private investigator who'd helped me with the sting. She was perusing a shelf of olive oils, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen her. "Hey," she greeted with a friendly smile. "Haven't seen you since the trial ended. How's life?" "Surprisingly good," I replied, picking up a carton of eggs. "You? Taking on more covert cases?" She grinned. "A few, but nothing as dramatic as your fiasco. That was a once-in-a-decade case." I chuckled, remembering her meticulous approach to installing cameras and tracking Anna's phone. Well, hopefully no one else tries to scam me. She patted my arm. I doubt they will. You're much too vigilant now. If you ever need investigating services again, though I hope not, you know where to find me. We exchanged goodbyes, and I felt a wave of gratitude for her role in exposing the truth. Without Brooke's help, Anna and Lance might have slithered away with half my assets. Late that evening, back in my condo, I stood by the window gazing at the shimmering city below. My reflection stared back. A man who'd faced betrayal head-on, orchestrated a careful revenge, and emerged victorious. I wondered if Anna ever replayed the same thoughts behind prison walls, cursing her own choices. But my sympathy was finite. I'd done what I had to do. Now it was time to live. Sliding open a sleek cabinet, I pulled out a small notebook I'd started keeping a list of personal goals, from traveling to learning to cook better meals. I added a new item: learn to let go of the past fully. I'd never be the same man I was before Anna's deception. There was a certain hardness in me now, a caution. But that didn't mean I had to be bitter forever. Something inside whispered that letting go didn't absolve Anna, it freed me. With that in mind, I scribbled a note to check flight deals for Europe. Maybe a solo journey to Italy or Spain, to taste different cultures, soak up new experiences, reclaim my life on a grand scale. Then I flicked off the lights, letting the ambient glow of the city lull me into a rare sense of peace. Anna might have stolen my innocence, but she hadn't stolen my future. I arrived in Seattle with a duffel bag of clothes, a few boxes shipped ahead, and a strange sense of renewal thrumming through my veins. It felt as though I'd left an entire life behind in Chicago: the betrayals, the arrests, the courtroom dramas, even the memory of Anna's tear-streaked face during sentencing. None of that existed here in the fresh Pacific Northwest air. If my old city carried a stale sadness, Seattle offered a brisk wind of possibility. The firm had placed me in a modern high-rise building downtown, where I stood in the gleaming lobby on my first day. A receptionist with a polished smile directed me to the top floor. My reflection in the mirrored elevator doors looked calm, professional, maybe even happy, something I never would have believed possible a few months back. I made my way to the corner office that read, Shane Matthews, Regional Director. The significance wasn't lost on me. I'd gone from a shattered husband to a man forging a new path, all in record time. I spent my first week meeting the team, learning the ropes of our Seattle branch, and easing into a daily routine that, for once, wasn't haunted by the dread of hidden camera feeds or conjured images of Anna and Lance rummaging through my home. My co-workers seemed friendly, curious about my background, but respectful enough not to pry. Some had heard rumors a big scandal involving a cheating wife, a con man lover, a cunning husband's revenge, but they only asked roundabout questions like, "So, you settled everything in Chicago?" I'd nod politely. "Yeah, tied up all the loose ends," I'd say, leaving out the harrowing details of the trial, the sting operation at the bank, the explosive meltdown in court. It felt good to keep the past locked away, revealed on my terms only. On one of my first weekends in Seattle, I strolled through Pike Place Market, letting the briny fish smell and the bustle of tourists wash over me. The city's vibe was laid-back yet bustling, with street musicians filling the air with melody. I walked along the waterfront, the salt tang of the bay perking my senses. For the first time in ages, I felt light unburdened. My phone only buzzed with normal messages, a text from Chris saying, "Any regrets leaving Chicago?" and a brief note from my new boss praising my swift integration into the team. I replied to Chris with a joking, "Only that you aren't here buying me a beer." Still, a sliver of wariness remained in me, a reflex from the months of cat and mouse in Chicago. Even as I enjoyed coffee in a local cafe, I'd occasionally glance around, half expecting Anna to come stumbling through the door in a last-ditch attempt at reconciliation. But that was impossible. She was in prison, 4 years locked away. Lance had a longer stay. I'd orchestrated their mutual destruction. No, I corrected myself. They had orchestrated it. I merely gave them the rope to hang themselves. At night, I'd lie in my sleek new apartment, windows open to the gentle hum of distant ferry horns, and reflect on the day. I reminded myself that the bitterness I'd carried had melted under the satisfaction of seeing justice done. Now, it was all about building a future that Anna could never taint. About 2 months into my Seattle life, I got wind that Anna had been denied any chance of an early appeal. Miss Harper, ever the diligent attorney, forwarded me a legal update that basically confirmed Anna would serve out her full term or close to it. The note read, "She's in a standard correctional facility, minimal privileges, minimal outside contact." I stared at that email for a good minute, some old pang stirring in my chest. Anna, the once cheerful marketing coordinator I'd married, now reduced to an inmate. But I refused to let guilt overshadow me. She'd chosen her path, ironically forging my signature while mocking me in emails. That wasn't a minor slip, it was a betrayal that cut to the core. I responded to Miss Harper with a brief thank you, explaining I didn't need further updates unless something major changed. She understood. I left my laptop, walked to my living room's floor-to-ceiling window, and surveyed the skyline. Lights shimmered, 1,000 possibilities flickering across the glass towers. Here, I was no longer the naive husband. I was the man who'd come out on top, with a new condo, a new job, and a new perspective on life. Shaking off old memories, I turned my attention to a text from one of my new coworkers, Paige, inviting me to a small company gathering at a rooftop bar. I contemplated for a moment. Social events used to feel like a chore, especially back when Anna was sneaking around, spinning lies. But now maybe it would be good to mingle, to let them know I was more than just a stoic manager. So I typed back, "Count me in," and decided it was time to blend into Seattle's social scene. That evening, the rooftop bar overlooked the water, city lights reflecting off the sound. My coworkers laughed, sipped cocktails, teased me gently about rumors they'd heard. "You're practically a legend, you know," teased one. "Some say you outsmarted a criminal ring." I gave a half smile, deflecting with a light comment. Nothing so dramatic, just cleaned up a messy situation. Inside, I felt a strange pride. I had outsmarted criminals. I'd uncovered every thread of Anna's scheme and laid the perfect trap. That cunning side of me was still there, but I hoped I'd never need it again. Time passed in a gentle rhythm. Mornings found me jogging along the waterfront, the crisp air clearing my mind. Days were spent finalizing client portfolios, meeting local business leaders, and steadily boosting the branch's performance. Evenings often involved quiet dinners or the occasional outing with colleagues. The shadows of Chicago, once suffocating, felt like a distant dream I'd awakened from. But some nights, I still had flickers of memory, Anna in tears when the police cuffed her, Lance cursing my name, or the bank scene with wide-eyed staff watching the con lovers unravel. My heart pounded at the recollection of those final tense minutes in the bank, me standing behind tinted glass while Anna and Lance sank themselves deeper. Then I'd remind myself, it's over. They're locked away. The mental swirl would ease, replaced by the certainty that I was beyond their reach. At the firm, colleagues picked up on my unwavering calm. They saw how methodical I was, double-checking figures, sealing deals with quiet confidence. "You never get rattled, do you?" one asked. I just smiled. After surviving the worst heartbreak and orchestrating the downfall of two conspirators, petty office stress seemed laughable. Sure, I'd lost a piece of my innocence, but in exchange, I'd gained an iron composure that served me well. Around this time, Chris visited for a weekend. We took a ferry ride across the Sound, sipping coffee on the deck. He marveled at how settled I seemed. "It's like you were meant to be here," he said, leaning against the railing. The wind whipped our faces. I shrugged. "I've put Chicago behind me. That chaos needed to be left behind." Chris nodded slowly. "You sure you're done with the place?" "No lingering regrets." I gazed at the sparkling water. "Regrets? Maybe that I didn't see Anna's betrayal sooner, but as for the city, it's in my rearview mirror and I'm content with that." He patted my shoulder, a silent show of support. We let the ferry's engine hum fill the space, the vastness of the water a symbol of the fresh start I was embracing. One late afternoon, Jade, an event planner I'd met at a corporate function, invited me to a small art festival in the heart of the city. She was warm, with an easy laugh and genuine curiosity about people's stories. When she asked about my background, I gave broad strokes. I was married, it ended badly, moved here for a new job. She didn't press for details, only nodded understandingly, as if sensing there was more beneath the surface. We wandered through aisles of local artists displaying paintings, sculptures, handcrafted trinkets. The smell of kettle corn wafted through the air, mixing with the faint scent of coffee from nearby stands. Jade paused at a booth selling watercolor cityscapes. "Isn't Seattle gorgeous in these?" she murmured, pointing to a piece showing the skyline at dusk. I found myself drawn to the painting's serenity. It represented the calm I was striving for. I ended up buying it, surprising even myself. "Where will you hang it?" Jade asked, smiling. "In my condo's living room," I replied. "Right by the window so the real skyline can compete with the painted one." She laughed at that, and for a moment I felt a gentle warmth that I hadn't experienced since before the fiasco with Anna. I reminded myself not to jump to conclusions. Jade was just a friend, or maybe a friend with possibilities. My heart was cautious, but open enough to appreciate simple joys. After the festival, we grabbed coffee and chatted about random everyday life. She teased me about my meticulous approach to finances. "Everyone says you never let a cent slip," she joked. "Guess that's why you got this big promotion." I only shrugged, thinking of the dark reason I'd become so vigilant. If only she knew how my watchfulness had saved me from financial ruin when Anna and Lance tried to siphon everything. But I kept that to myself, giving Jade a half smile. For once, I wanted to be known without the weight of that scandal following me around. Occasionally, Monica from Chicago would text me updates, nothing major, just checking in. She'd mention hearing from Anna's parents, who were apparently coping with their daughter's incarceration by blaming each other, or by going silent. I rarely replied at length. That chapter was closed. I refused to slip back into the emotional quagmire. I had no reason to dwell on Anna's fate. The law had taken its course. One day, though, Monica sent a startling message. "Anna asked me to pass a letter on to you. She says she's changed, regrets everything." My pulse quickened as I read it. Then I exhaled, typed back, "No thanks. I don't need to hear from her. The echoes of Anna's betrayal might fade, but I wouldn't give them fresh oxygen by indulging her pleas." Still, the incident rattled me briefly. That night, I sat on my balcony, city lights sparkling below, mind drifting to what might be in Anna's letter if I'd read it. Would she detail regrets, beg for a second chance, or apologize for forging my signature? It doesn't matter, I told myself. She'd known exactly what she was doing when she sneered at my supposed dullness. She'd teamed up with Lance to exploit me. That was enough. No apology could erase the memory of her flaunting their affair in my living room, mocking me as blind and boring. I pushed the thoughts away, focusing on the present. I had new colleagues who respected me, a city brimming with culture, and a blossoming friendship with Jade. Anna was a memory locked behind bars, a cautionary tale. She can write 1,000 letters. I'm done reading them. With that resolution, I headed to bed, the quiet hum of traffic lulling me to sleep. Work soared. Our Seattle branch landed a major corporate account, and in recognition of my leadership, the CEO hinted I might soon rise to a vice president role. I poured myself into negotiations, presenting polished financial strategies that impressed clients. Each success felt like a personal victory, a testament that no betrayal could hold me back. Chris flew in for a visit. We tackled the tourist side of Seattle, the Space Needle, the ferry to Bainbridge Island, sampling local breweries. One evening over dinner, he leaned forward, an amused glint in his eye. "Remember when you used to be so methodical about everything? Now you're planning these spontaneous outings." I smirked. "Guess I realized life can twist on you when you least expect it. Might as well enjoy the calmer moments." He raised his glass. "To calmer moments and to your unstoppable revenge." I rolled my eyes good-naturedly. We clinked glasses, though part of me still felt the lingering aftertaste of the entire fiasco. Revenge had been unstoppable, yes, but it had come at the cost of heartbreak, disillusionment, and a chunk of my emotional well-being. Still, I'd do it all again if it meant saving myself from Anna's scheme. On Chris's last day, we sat in a park overlooking Puget Sound, sipping coffee, discussing old times. He asked, "Think Anna's fully learned her lesson?" I shrugged. "I'm not losing sleep over it. She can do whatever she wants behind bars." He nodded. "And Lance?" A slight smirk tugged at my lips. "Probably conjuring elaborate fantasies of payback. But he's got no leverage. I outplayed him at every turn. Chris studied me. You're not worried he'll orchestrate something from prison? I shook my head. He's got no money, no loyal allies. He's just a disgraced con man rotting away. Even if he tries, I'm prepared. Those words settled between us, a final statement of closure. We parted with a firm handshake, vowing to stay in touch. Months drifted by in a pleasant routine. Jade and I found ourselves spending more time together, whether it was checking out new restaurants or sharing a quiet evening cooking in my condo. She'd marvel at the watercolor painting I'd bought, the one of the Seattle skyline I'd placed near the window. Your living space has zero clutter, she noted once, teasing me. No pictures of old memories? I froze a moment, thinking of the photos I'd shredded, wedding snapshots, honeymoon Polaroids, and Anna's last letter. I prefer a fresh start, I answered simply. Jade accepted it with a nod, no intrusive questions. It felt good, this slow-burn approach to companionship. She knew I'd been married, she sensed there was pain in my past, but she never pushed me to relive it. Instead, we found ourselves connecting over shared interests, hiking the Cascades, exploring local farmers' markets, or just chatting about odd headlines from around the world. I liked that she didn't need to dig into my trauma to validate me. Every so often, I'd catch myself comparing Jade's honesty and gentle warmth to Anna's manipulative charm. I tried not to dwell on it, but the difference was stark. Jade was open, never leaving me guessing about her whereabouts or spinning lies. Anna, in contrast, had thrived on secrecy until I forced it into the open. The memory was like a small bruise I pressed occasionally, reminding me to remain watchful but not paranoid. At work, success continued. I implemented new strategies, streamlined staff workflow, and soon the branch soared to new revenue records. The CEO shot me an email. We might need your expertise on a national scale. Keep it up. In the quiet after reading that email, I realized I was truly thriving. Anna and Lance had tried to break me, but ironically, their betrayal had hardened my resolve, fueling a drive that led me to bigger achievements. Out of nowhere, I got a brief message from Miss Harper. Anna up for parole hearing soon. She might get a year off if they approve. I can let you know if you'd like. I stared at the text, a swirl of emotions churning. Did I care if Anna shaved a year off her sentence? Did it matter? She was gone from my life. No more strings attached. Part of me wanted to ensure she never got out a day earlier than necessary. Another part recognized I was done meddling. Her fate was sealed by her own actions. I tapped a reply. No need to update me. I trust the system. Miss Harper responded with a simple understood. Then I tucked my phone away, determined not to let that news overshadow my day. If the parole board decided in Anna's favor, so be it. She'd still have a felony record, a shattered reputation, and zero hold on me. That evening, Jade noticed I was a bit tense. We were at a small seafood place sharing crab cakes. Everything all right? She asked softly. I considered telling her about Anna's parole, but decided it was unnecessary baggage. Just some old news from Chicago, I murmured. She nodded with understanding, her hand lightly covering mine. Well, you're here now. That's what matters. I squeezed her hand back, grateful for her non-intrusive warmth. Later, as I walked Jade to her car, a gentle drizzle pattered on the sidewalk. We paused under a street lamp, the city lights reflecting in shallow puddles. She brushed a raindrop off my jacket. You know, she said, voice low, for a while I wondered if you were holding back something big. But I can see you're just cautious, and that's okay. I felt my chest tighten at her perceptiveness. I appreciate your patience, I said softly. She leaned in, and for the first time, we shared a tentative kiss. It was brief, warm, carrying the promise of a fresh bond untainted by betrayal. As the next few weeks unfolded, I found myself telling Jade snippets of my past, nothing too graphic, but enough that she knew my ex-wife had not only cheated, but tried to rob me blind. Her eyes widened when I mentioned forging checks and a criminal trial. That's insane, she whispered. I'm so sorry you went through that. I shrugged, forcing a small smile. It was a lesson learned. She asked if I hated Anna. I paused, reflecting. Hate is too strong. I feel pity, maybe. She made horrific choices, ended up in prison. I once loved her, but that person no longer exists. The Anna I married died the moment she conspired with Lance. Jade's hand found mine again. She didn't push further, likely sensing I'd shared enough for one day. Work soared even higher. The CEO visited our branch, praising my leadership in front of everyone, hinting at a possible vice presidency in the near future. My team applauded. Colleagues clapped me on the back. I stood there, half smiling, half in awe of how drastically life had changed from those nights lying awake, reading Anna's damning emails. If only she'd known that her plan would backfire so thoroughly, catapulting me to success while she rotted in a cell. One evening, I found an old folder in my closet labeled Legal Evidence Anna Lance. Inside were printed emails, hidden camera stills, phone logs. I flipped through them briefly, feeling a wave of intense recollection. There was Anna's scathing commentary about my boring personality, Lance's arrogant texts about forging signatures. My pulse quickened with anger, yet it was muted like a story I'd watched on TV. I gathered the papers, fed them into a shredder. The harsh word devoured each page, leaving behind confetti strips. Never again, I muttered, relief flooding me. I'd used these documents to bury Anna and Lance legally. Now they had no place in my new life. Spring rolled into summer, and my condo took on a cozy vibe with Jade's little additions, a throw blanket here, a potted plant there, her coffee mug in my cupboard. The relationship blossomed quietly, no drama, no secrets. Sometimes I'd catch myself marveling at how simple honesty could be after enduring the labyrinth of Anna's lies. Chris visited once more, noticing Jade's presence. "You two serious?" he asked with a friendly grin. I shrugged, a soft warmth in my chest. "Seems so. She makes me happy, man." He studied me, nodded. "Glad to see it. You deserve this peace." Then we toasted to the next phase of life, clinking glasses in my living room where the skyline painting hung, ironically next to the real skyline outside. Shortly after, I received a final, somewhat anticlimactic update. Anna had tried for parole, but it was denied. She'd serve at least another year or two. Lance, on the other hand, was rumored to have gotten into more fights, possibly extending his sentence. The fiasco's final footnotes read like a cautionary tale. Cheaters, con artists, locked away. For a moment, I felt a flicker of guilt imagining Anna in prison garb. Then I remembered her vicious words about draining my accounts, her intimate laughter with Lance in my living room. No, I reminded myself, she sealed her own fate. Time marched on. By midsummer, Jade and I planned a small getaway, just a weekend trip to the coast. We ate clam chowder by a rocky beach, strolled hand in hand, and laughed about silly tourist traps. I realized with quiet gratitude that I was fully present, not haunted by ghosts of Chicago. Jade never asked for anything but my company and trust. On our final night there, we stood on a bluff overlooking the ocean. Wind whipped through our hair, the sunset painting the horizon orange and pink. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt a surge of contentment. I thought, if Anna's betrayal was a violent storm, this is the calm that followed. My heart felt whole again, albeit scarred. I'd never be that naive man who overlooked red flags, but I'd learned how to love carefully, how to let someone in without relinquishing my self-respect. Returning to Seattle, a sense of closure settled over me. Anna and Lance were nothing more than a cautionary memory. The trial, the sentencing, the meltdown in the bank, those belonged to a chapter that had ended with a flourish of justice. Now I was living my best life, forging real connections, and reaping the rewards of my resilience. A final sign of growth came when Miss Harper mailed me the official dissolution paperwork for the entire fiasco. Divorce finalization, property settlement, everything. As I filed it away, I felt no anger, just a gentle resolve. We're done. That single thought encapsulated the entire journey from heartbreak to triumph. I'm free, and I've moved on. Stepping onto my condo balcony that evening, city lights twinkling, Jade at my side, I inhaled deeply, letting the crisp air fill my lungs. My phone buzzed a text from Chris. "Heard your branch hit another record. Proud of you, man." I typed back a simple thanks, because truly, the biggest milestone wasn't the business success. It was the intangible victory. Anna and Lance had tried to ruin me, but they'd only made me stronger. My epilogue wasn't a gentle fade. It was a triumphant emergence into a life that soared beyond their reach.